Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching first part of What If Naruto has light release. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
The night in Konoha, the village tucked away among the leaves, was cloudless. There was devastation everywhere you looked. A terrifying creature known as a Biju attacked the village a few hours ago. This Biju, known as Kyuubi no Yoko, nine-tailed fox, was the strongest of them all. The ninja village and its residents, who were occupied with counting the dead, were surrounded by the stench of death. Minato Namikaze, the village's lone ninja known as Yondaime Hokage, fourth fire shadow, sealed the beast inside a blonde newborn infant to defeat it. The council, which was chaired by Sarutobi Hiruzen, third fire shadow, the Sandaime Hokage, had just received the preliminary death toll. The council convened to decide what would happen to the newborn. One young, white-haired woman yelled, "Burn him! Burn the demon! He hurt my husband and killed so many." The elderly Hokage then let out a lot of deadly intent, nearly causing the woman to faint. Counselor Haruno, for the 15th and final time, we are not gathered here to decide whether to execute the boy, but to find a good solution about his placement. If you can't get this through your thick head, then stay silent, leave or be executed. This is your last warning. But she wanted to object until two Anbu, one with a mask shaped like a dragon, Ryu, and the other with one shaped like a dog, Inu, emerged from the shadows in the background and moved their blades close to the neck, just a hair's breadth from the skin. You disrespect his sacrifice to this village and to you indirectly by trying to have this boy killed. Two would be the fact that the civilian council has no power over military matters such as execution and, he said, adding, as you can see, my word will be respected in these proceedings. Besides, I can give you 3 good reasons to ignore your requests. One is that Minato wanted this child to be seen as a hero and jailer of the Kyuubi and not as the demon incarnate. 2 would be the fact that the civilian council has no authority over military matters like execution. Hiruzen questioned, Jiraiya, what is the meaning of this? He turned to the council and said, I came to give you an even better reason. Number 3, because if anything happens to this boy, consider me and my spy network an enemy of the leaf, he exclaimed. There was a commotion in the room. If something were to happen to a random brat, why would one of the Sannin declare war on the village? A random civilian council member protested, Jiraiya-sama, why would you go so far to protect this boy from harm? He is nothing but a monster. Until he was silenced by a third kunai near his jewels, and 2 kunai grazing each side of his head. Jiraiya snarled, I won't allow you to unfairly accuse this boy in that manner. Unless you say that you are a seal master greater than Minato or myself. I examined the seal and it is flawless. Unless you decide to insult my students, your Yondaime Hokage, and the world's greatest Fuin expert's memory and the Shinigami, a freaking god, you will all shut up and be quiet unless you have a good idea about this child's care or spoken to. Jiraiya yelled with a great deal of killer. 2 of the civilians. The Sandaime cleared his throat with a cough. Everyone's gaze shifted away from the elderly Hokage until an elderly man who appeared more like a mummy than a human, with one arm wrapped in bandages around his waist and another covering part of his face and one eye, raised his hand. Now that discussion is over, let us get back to the matter at hand. This boy needs a family to care for him. Will anyone here take the boy to be raised? Sandaime gazed at the elderly war hawk as he lowered his hand and clicked his tongue, saying, No Danzo, I will not let you have the hero of our village to turn him into a mindless killer. He is destined for greatness and will not become a pawn in your schemes. Then, with complete disappointment, he turned to face the other Konoha council members. Is this the behavior befitting of the villagers the fourth gave his life for? I am too old and must still look after this village and my wife is dead, but my heart weeps that I could not take him in. Jiraiya must maintain his spy network as this village's one and only spy master. Now tell me, what is your excuse? The elderly fire shadow growled at the people in his path. First to respond was Hyuga Hiyashi. I understand Lord Hokage, as I too would love to take the boy that my closest friend Minato proclaimed a hero. But in my household he would be tortured by his peers and he himself would not understand why, not only because of the Biju but also because of our eyes. I honestly apologize to both you and Minato. Hyuga bowed deeply to the head. Hiruzen turned to the civilian section and said, Understandable, as with all clans who pose keke genkai or secret jutsu. Do I even need to ask? The counselors remained silent and turned their heads away. Well? Screamed Sarutobi. Each of them shook their head. Then the Hokage sighed. Danzo flashed his, I win, as he said, the boy will be placed under the supervision of. When Hiruzen finished saying, the orphanage, I smiled. Hokage-sama, you can't be serious. He must be properly trained to control the beast within him. The Warhawk exclaimed, leaping to his feet. The old man was on a roll with Danzo, who sat down at the sound of that warning. The boy shall be trained Danzo. The mummy's eye widened. If he chooses to join the academy at the right age, I will not argue this further with you. Stand down or I will charge you with treason and insubordination. This meeting and its discussions are classified as top S-class secrets by me. Under penalty of death, you will not be permitted to speak about it. Another aspect of this type of secret is that only the boy and I will ever be permitted to discuss the contents of his seal. The Hokage announced that the meeting was adjourned. Inu. Yes, sir. The dog-masked Ambu materialized before him. Sign him as Naruto Uzumaki and take him to the orphanage. Hello. The boy was taken by the Anbu, who then vanished. Nearly 4.5 years later, a little blonde boy was running from a shinobi-led mob, jumping everywhere he could and scampering under fences. One of the aforementioned shinobi, a chunin, shunshined in front of the boy Kanai at the ready, who begged his assailant to leave him alone after the child had escaped from the civilians. Don't harm me, please. I took no action, demon. You will pay for the lives you have taken, so don't try to fool me. The kunai that the chunin fired sailed through the air and impaled itself into Naruto's chest, missing his heart by 1/1000th of an inch and severely damaging his lungs and arteries. The man fired it just as 2 swords slashed his neck and abdomen horizontally, but it was too late. Shit. Ryu, we have to take him to the hospital, cried the dog-masked Anbu. These wounds are terrible. He gave the order. Hello. The dragon took it, and they both disappeared as they ascended the roof. On the way there, Naruto lost himself in his subconscious. He woke up in a sewer, fully recovered, and unsure of his location when he heard a low growl coming from a corridor. Choosing to trust his gut, he followed the red and blue pipes that led to what appeared to be white boxes. Before breaking into more red and blue pipes, he followed the largest of these until he came to a huge room with golden iron bars that had an odd character written in the center. Oh, how Naruto wished he could read. Get nearer. The boy was given an order in a low, growling voice from the darkness behind the bars. He continued doing this until he was only a few feet away from the bars, at which point 2 red eyes that seemed to be burning into your soul emerged from the shadows. Who are you? As though enthralled by the powerful eyes, Naruto asked, to me or you? Those eyes would have immediately conjured up images of evil, but the boy, who was accustomed to concealing emotions even at such a young age, saw something else in them: regret and sadness. Suddenly, a figure that resembled a huge fox emerged into the light. Make a guess. It responded by fluttering 9 tails in the air. The boy's face went pale, and his eyes grew wide. Kyuubi no Yoko. You're right, Kit. The fox grinned. Where are we? And why have you come here? You were killed by the Yondaime Hokage. After calming down, the boy inquired. We are in your mindscape, which is located inside your kit. It's a mental space where we can connect and have a conversation regarding your second query. Consider this. I am an eternal Biju with more chakra than all the people in your village combined, including the shinobi and even the Hokage. How could I be killed by a single ninja? With a look of boredom on his face, the fox replied to Naruto. The reality of his predicament astounded Naruto. He didn't kill you, he said you were placed inside me by him. The word sealed is the right one, and he did indeed seal me inside you, at least half of me, to prevent my will from affecting you. He removed my yin, or spiritual chakra. The Kyuubi was a little angry at the Hokage's transgression, but also carried respect into his eyes at the recollection of the memory. Not that it would do much good, kid. I am aware of how his people treat you. Let's get our retribution. Let me go, Kyuubi chuckled. No, I simply wanted to know why they treat me with such fear and hatred. I don't want retribution. I don't wish to ruin the community without Konoha. How could I be Hokage? The blonde grinned, but his expression instantly turned emotionless. Why? The enormous fox arched an eyebrow when Naruto asked, glancing at him but avoiding his face. You attacked Konoha years ago, but why? How did you end up in the village? The boy looked straight into his prisoner's eyes as he finished his question. The fox smiled at Naruto and said, hee, well, I was bored and wanted to have some fun. The child was silent for a moment, his bangs casting a shadow over the upper portion of his face as he gazed at the shallow water at his feet. Liar, murmured Naruto. What? Inquired the Biju. With pain in his sky-blue eyes, Naruto jerked his face upward. The boy cried, I said you were a liar. The blonde began to sob with half-closed eyes, saying, don't lie to me. I can see the regret in your eyes when you think about that day. And I saw the pain when you lied. And I can also see that you are not evil at all, just. The fox stopped grinning and stabbed the child with a claw through the bars that came to a stop close to his face. Why did your claw stop? You had enough room. And you will have my body and be free if I pass away here. Naruto stopped crying and turned to face the Kyuubi with empathy. The fox became very startled by this and began to stammer. I don't. Look, you are simply in pain. You are not evil. Why? The youngster was worried about his prisoner. The fox was the source of the silence. Brat, why are you concerned? The fox, trying to conceal his own insecurity, asked. Because I am aware of how painful it is to have no one care about your pain. No one, whether Biju or human, deserves that kind of treatment, Naruto replied earnestly. With his eyes closed and the upper portion of his face shadowed, the Biju was deep in thought. You remind me a lot of someone I used to know, Kit. He was also a good-natured busybody who had the ability to read people's inner suffering. If it's okay with you, may I ask who? With a cute and inquisitive expression, the child cocked his head slightly. My father and the original shinobi, the sage of 6 paths, the Biju replied, tears streaming down his face, was also a person who selflessly cared for the suffering of others. He created me and my 8 other brothers as a result of his conflict with my mother, and he created jutsus to aid the weak and the suffering. In awe, Naruto listened to the fox. My mother was the Gyuubi, a giant demon, 10 tails. It went on a rampage through the countryside, wreaking havoc and causing suffering to everyone it encountered. This infuriated the old man, who fought the monster until it seemed to be winning in a moment of brilliance. The man sealed a Biju inside himself, making him the first Jinchuriki, human sacrifice. However, it was strong, and he used a remarkable technique to split its chakra into 9 others, one of which created me, as he was about to die. The blonde was soaking up the information from this tale while sitting lotus-style on the damp sewer prison floor. Kyuubi felt grief overtake him. Before he passed on, he told us that we were born out of the Gyuubi's soul, but we could follow the right path. I apologize, old man. I failed you. He looked up at the ceiling and cried. No, you didn't, Naruto shouted. Awaken. WHO told you that? WHO caused you to have that thought? As loudly as his lungs would allow, Naruto let out a scream. For a very long time, people have utilized us as weapons of mass destruction. My first host wasn't you. I simply allowed their rage and greed to seep into me, and I became lost in the dark. I was unsuccessful. The fox had a sad expression. So, snap out of it, damn it. There's nothing to do but clamp up when you hit the bottom. History is the past. You have the whole future to change and improve. I will personally put you back on track if you concede defeat so easily. I'm telling you, and since that's my ninja way, I never back down from a promise. With diamond-hard resolve, the boy screamed at the fox. Kyuubi gazed at him in astonishment. Rewind. A young Kyuubi and his other tailed brothers were facing an old man. He founded the ninja world and was known as the Sage of 6 Paths. The following line was spoken between the kind man's last words to them. And unlike when you were within me, you will be led down the right path. Flashback concludes and he whispered, Kurama. What? Inquired the blonde after saying, my name is Kurama. He carefully inserted a claw through the bars. The child smiled and touched the claw, saying, Hee, it's nice to meet you, Kurama ni-san. I am Naruto Uzumaki, the future greatest Hokage. He and Kurama both grinned. Naruto awoke in the hospital ward with a bandage over his chest and a mildly uncomfortable but manageable ache. He recalled that he had promised Kurama ni that he would do everything in his power to protect him and that he would be happy to assist him if he ever needed it. Additionally, he demonstrated to Naruto how to access his chakra. They were both given a surprise at that point. Rewind. Okay kid, close your eyes and look deep inside of you. You should feel it as pure power coursing through you. Found it? The blonde replied. Grab it and don't let it slip. Pull it up as you return from inside your mind. All right, here I go, Naruto said, opening his eyes 2 seconds later to discover that bluish chakra was swirling around him. When the child's blue chakra began to glow white and all the squares on the mindscape's walls began to glow in the same manner, the fox exclaimed, Great job kid. Wah. Naruto became a little uneasy at his Nisan's response. What's happening? Well, you seem to have the ability to use the Ranpu, light, chakra, kid. Well done. It's been almost 400 years since I've seen that. My chakra should have protected you from the poisons and diseases, but oddly, it usually shows up in those who have been exposed to them because of its powerful purification powers. My chakra, of course. Kurama was behaving oddly as he described the strange light to Naruto. What's the matter? Is it bad? The child was growing anxious. No kid, simply put, this seal allowed my chakra to seep into your system, which is how the Ranpu chakra in your body appeared since it was a small amount. Your body gradually adjusted to converting your yin chakra into Ranpu element as a defense against my yang chakra, which was transferred to you without my assistance. However, if taken without my consent, it is extremely corrosive and dangerous for any human. Nice. What then is it capable of? The kid was growing enthusiastic. Like I said, it has powerful purification abilities in the form of energetic radiation. You can heal any disease and neutralize any poison in your own body as well as other people. Besides that, it gives you control of any form of light or radiation, plus it can energize your whole body or specific body parts to work better. I think I even remember a few jutsu using light element, and you don't have to do training to use them since your body can produce it naturally instead of you willing your chakra to change into it like normal elemental jutsu. Try directing some chakra to your eyes and after that send some to your brain. Kurama continued. After some initial difficulty, Naruto eventually grasped the eye part. He was astounded when he opened them because he could clearly see Nisan's chakra pathways, and his outline appeared to be speckled with spots ranging from red to blue. In addition to seeing a lot of things and energies that he had previously missed, he was able to see every detail in a way that would make a Hyuga green with envy. That, Naruto, is called the Shinsogen no Jutsu, Eyes of Truth technique. It lets you see in the dark, see chakra and chakra pathways. Also thermal vision, and judging by your expression, that is what you are seeing now in me. You see hotter spots from orange, red or white for the hottest and blue, violet or black for colder. Also you can see X-rays and gamma rays, and that lets you see through walls. You can also see in a perfect sphere around yourself and amplify natural light to zoom to any distance proportional to your chakra quantity and control. It also makes you very resistant to genjutsu or any kind of illusions. It is believed that this was what caused the birth of the Byakugan, though nobody knows for sure. After mastering that section, Naruto began directing Ranpu chakra towards his brain, everything, including him. Slowly he became a little alarmed by this and let go of the technique. I see that you tried the Sojin Seishin no Jutsu, mind purification technique. It accelerates your thoughts as well as clearing your mind of unnecessary thoughts. It gives you the same mental steadiness as a master monk's as well as a good amount of extra thinking time. Also you see everything slowed down, so you will have a detailed view of every action, giving you time to plan your next move or analyze a fast situation or jutsu. Just like the previous jutsu, it's limited only by the quantity of Ranpu chakra you. The child wondered if Kurama knew anything more and was thrilled that he could accomplish something so amazing. Unfortunately, the only thing the fox could recall was that he could purify someone else by putting his hands directly on their skin and infusing them with pure Ranpu chakra. Flashback concludes 2 months later. On October 10th, Naruto's birthday fell on the same day as the festival commemorating the Yondaime Hokage's victory over the Kyuubi. What a wonderful birthday gift he received. Caretakers said he was old enough to live on his own, so they expelled him from the orphanage. And she truly meant and hoped to die when she said, live. He survived for the next 4 months and 3 weeks, during which time Ayame and her father Tuchi found him and gave him his first bowl of ramen after he passed out from starvation. In addition to saving his life, he developed a deep affection for the material. Additionally, they informed the Hokage, who used the orphanage's caregivers as weekly practice dummies for Ibiki, also known as the sadist, who oversaw the torture and interrogation division, and Anko, who was his deputy. Since the slums were the only place that would take Naruto, Sarutobi also gave him an apartment there. He trained his Shinsogen and Sojin Seishin in the woods later that day. Since Kurama stopped using the Biju chakra that the seal causes to seep into the boy to send his will, he was making good on this. The blue chakra ceased fighting the red one, which cleared his chakra of instabilities and increased his stamina. The blonde then used his Ranpu-powered eyes to spot a young girl 150 feet away who was about to be attacked by a bear. He started toward her in an attempt to assist her, but as soon as he was close enough to hear her, he noticed a stunning woman hurrying to her side. She wore a light sky blue kimono patterned with white roses. She had 2 bangs on either side of her face, and her silky dark blue hair reached her waist. The thing that caught his attention the most was that she shared the young girl's milky white eyes. However, compared to the girl, she had pupils in her eyes, and some veins protruded around them. As she sprinted toward the bear, Naruto instinctively used both of his Ranpu jutsu and observed her adopt a stance in which her left arm was extended a few inches above her left foot with the palm facing the sky, and her feet were spread apart, left in front of right. Because her torso was bent forward, her right arm was higher above her right leg and formed the same line as her left. The boy saw that the middle and index fingers were grouped together and stretched more than the other fingers in each of her hands. Additionally, he saw how the chakra on the tips of the aforementioned fingers resembled a needle or sharp tip. Then, shouting, "Hake Rokuhuion Sho! 8 trigrams! 64 palms!" the woman leapt at the bear when Naruto saw her striking the bear's tenketsu chakra points. His eyes widened. He was aware of them since Kurama had explained the chakra system to him during one of his mindscape visits. She yelled, 2 points, and hit 2 tenketsu. 4 points, and hit 2 more, 8 points, 4 more points. 16 points. With 8 more points to close. She hits 16 more points, saying, 32 points. 64 points. She exclaims as she completes the final 32 hits. The movements, which flowed with grace, power, speed, and accuracy, captivated Naruto. He would have only seen a blur if he hadn't been wearing his jutsus, but when they were in use, the event was permanently recorded in his mind. The woman's eyes lost their pupils as she relaxed, which caused the blood vessels close to them to deflate. Next, she looked at her daughter. When Naruto saw this, he decided to scram. He was once more practicing in the same woods. A week later, he was unaware that it was late to commemorate the signing of the peace treaty between Konoha and Kumogakure. The village held another festival. Village hidden in the clouds. When the head Kumo Nin arrived in front of the cloud delegates earlier, there was a massive procession. For Naruto, this meant more commotion, more late-night food odors, and most importantly, more inebriated Avengers fighting the demon. He saw an unidentified presence infiltrating the Hyuga compound. While he was taking a brief break and using his Shinsugen, he took cover among bushes. Shortly after, the same shinobi emerged carrying a bag containing the girl he had seen a week prior, kidnapped. He pondered out of the bushes, Shinsugen alit. He leapt. He ordered her to let her go. The shinobi was a little taken aback, but then he realized that there was nobody else in the area. He came back with, "Get out of my way, brat." After giving a small growl, Naruto charged forward. The boy said, "I said let her go," as he leapt to strike the man in the face. The man merely sidestepped and kicked Naruto hard in the abdomen, causing the boy to spit blood and fly 15 feet away. Kurama pushed the boy. "Kid, use my power, instead." The blonde then experienced a tremendous surge of power, and a thin orange light aura flashed through his body. Then, with amazing speed, he kicked his feet and launched himself at the kidnapper, striking a pressure point that rendered the man paralyzed and caused him to collapse to the ground. After checking on the girl, he released his Nisan's chakra when he saw that she was unharmed. After coughing up blood, Naruto passed out and collapsed to the ground, face down. At that moment, 2 Anbu appeared close by as Hiyashi ran out of the house and knelt down next to the 2 kids. The cat-shaped Anbu asked the Hyuga head in a female voice, "Hiyashi-sama, are you alright? We felt an unknown chakra spike somewhere around here." Hiyashi pointed to the 2 and checked on his daughter, saying, "I felt the same spike as well, but when I woke up I activated my Byakugan and saw this boy fighting this man. I rushed out to intercept them, but by the time I got here both had passed out." The cat Anbu said, "Isn't it Naruto? I know him because Hokage-sama occasionally has me protect him. The unknown is still alive. I don't know if that boy was lucky or aimed for it, but he hit a pressure point near the right shoulder and paralyzed him. He will come to in about 2 hours. He reached for the mask. He succeeded. The Kumo head Nin was the one. What was Naruto doing fighting him here? Asked the cat. The second Anbu wearing a wolf mask exclaimed, "Wait, Neko, cat. I can smell knockout drugs." What? The startled cat asked. After that, they looked in the Kumo Nin's pockets and discovered a tiny bottle of liquid and a handkerchief that smelled. They all 3 said the same thing while glancing at the young girl who was sleeping. "Kidnapping. What's wrong with the boy?" the cat then asked. After looking at the child and activating his Byakugan, Hiyashi responded, "He appears to be exhausted, has some internal injuries to his right lung and a broken rib that are already healing. It doesn't seem serious. I will bring this boy inside my compound to be looked after until he heals. You should take that scum to the TNIHQ. He subsequently entered the residence. Together, they exclaimed, "Hi," and picked up the unconscious shinobi before vanishing. Naruto woke up the following day in a strange house and an expensive futon. He felt a sharp pain in his side as he jumped out of bed. Additionally, it was discovered that he was wearing a silk sleeping robe that looked expensive. Then he remembered the fight from last night and realized that he had some sort of injury that was causing his pain. The fox assured him, "Don't worry, kid, I'll have you patched up by noon." "Ni-san, are you aware of my subsequent circumstances?" "Sorry, Naruto, but when you black out it cuts my connection to the outside world as well." "I see." Then someone knocked on the door. Behind the door's screen, a gentle woman's voice said, "Naruto-sama, are you awake yet?" "Yes. Could you please tell me where are we?" "We are in the Hyuga compound main branch house. If you can, will you get changed and follow me? Hiyashi-sama wants to see you for breakfast." "Sure." The blonde searched but was unable to locate his clothing. Sorry, but could you please tell me where can I find my clothes? Your clothes have been sent to be washed. As soon as they dry they will be delivered to this room. Until then feel free to use the clothes on the table, she replied. Thank you. After putting on the fine black sash and white silk kimono that were on the table, Naruto left the room. Then he noticed the woman standing on her knees, Caesar. If I recall correctly, although she wasn't particularly beautiful, she exuded a serene aura throughout. She wore a simple yet elegant kimono with a dark blue sash, a long piece of white silk covering her forehead tied in a cute bow tie to the right of her head, highlighting her dark blue hair, and the same milky white Byakugan as the other Hyuga. When she stood up, she exclaimed, "Follow me please." Still apprehensive about entering the compound, Naruto said a little shakily, would you mind me asking your name, miss? You can call me Yuki, but my name is Yukiheim Hyuga, she grinned. Yuki-san, nice to meet you. He lowered his head a little, and she followed suit. When they reached a big door a short while later, Yuki exclaimed, Hiyashi-sama, Naruto-sama has arrived. Get him inside, Hiyashi replied. She opened the door, and Naruto stepped inside. The door closed behind him, and the boy saw that he was in a large dining room with Hiyashi in the middle of what appeared to be a group of elderly Hyugas, with the exception that the woman who had vanquished the bear was standing to the man's right, and a figure that appeared to be a clone of Hiyashi was standing to his left, but he was wearing the Konoha Nin's Hite 8 headband. Never do anything if they don't invite you first. Kurama had taught Naruto proper etiquette when interacting with nobles, and Naruto stood 2 steps from the door. Naruto was invited by the head Hyuga to, please, sit down and eat. Thank you, sir. Naruto bowed and sat down at the table, but he had a question to ask before he could begin to eat. I must ask why you are doing this for me, but thank you again for inviting me. Hiyashi-sama. He hoped he wasn't impolite when he asked. Is it really that strange for a father to feed his daughter's rescuer? Even though you are only 5 years old, you have already suffered internal injuries while defending my girl. I want to express my gratitude and extend an invitation for you to stay here while you heal. After blushing and turning to face his lap, Naruto heard a gentle and affectionate voice. Additionally, I want to thank you. It is really admirable that you put your life in danger for a total stranger, said the lovely woman beside Hiyashi. It didn't matter. Excuse me, but who are you? I apologize for forgetting to introduce myself. I am the mother of Hinata-chan. Hyuga is my name. At that moment, an elderly man at the end of the table interrupted her. Never, even if I die in battle, I will not permit that demon spawn to desecrate the name of our clan. Then, with his right hand cocked back and his left hand outstretched, he charged at Naruto. Naruto barely avoided that man's Juken strike as he used the chakra of the Biju and activated his Shinsogen, Sojin Seishin. There is only one thing I can do right now, and I sincerely hope it works. Shit, he's actually trying to kill me. The blonde leapt back, flew into the backyard of the Hyuga through an open door, and then stood motionless, eyes closed. Ignoring Hiyashi's orders to stand down, the old man charged at him and then threw a palm full of chakra at Naruto. A green yin-yang circle appeared with both of them in the center of other concentric green circles, and Naruto spun on his heel and avoided that strike, surprising everyone in the room. When he opened his eyes, which were glowing with an intense white glow, he was 3 feet away from the old man and bent his torso towards the elder Hyuga, spreading his legs left forward with his arm above it. Palm to the sky. The elder appeared to be frozen in place from the sight, and the right side was a mirror image of his left, with the mirror representing the boy's spine. Then, in an emotionless voice, the blonde said, Hake Hyaku Nijuuhachi show, you are within my reach. 2 strikes, 4 strikes, 8 strikes, 16 strikes, 32 strikes, 64 strikes. By this point, the elderly man was leaning against a wooden training post, which was being cracked by the powerful chakra that passed through him. 8 trigrams 128 palms. He then collected Kurama's chakra to energize his body and blasted the elderly Hyuga's non-vital tenketsu. The elder was sent flying to a wall, cracking it as he hit, and the last blow destroyed the enormous wooden post, causing him to fall limp and pant. The Biju's chakra dwindled as Naruto relaxed after confirming his opponent's defeat, causing him to wobble and pant because the energy's strain on the boy's immature body was a bit too much for it to bear. Then he heard a thud. When the blonde turned around, he saw that Hiyashi and his clone were kneeling over his collapsed wife, both of them calling for a doctor, and that many other Hyuga were also in a state of stupor. Naruto mustered up the last of his strength and leapt to their side. Whatever became of her? As he pulled himself to Hiyashi's side, the boy said. His wife was unconscious, breathing heavily and perspiring as if she had just experienced a terrible nightmare, and the man was holding her head. My wife suffers from a disease that poisons her internal organs, and it only gets worse when she's anxious or excited. It became even worse after the birth of our second daughter, Hanabi, who is susceptible to death from almost anything that surprises or upsets her." The seemingly emotionless man felt a tear trickle down his cheek as he closed his eyes and bit his lip. "I try to protect her as best as I can, but this event might just be. She was one of the few people who treated him with kindness and even showed appreciation for him, and now she was dying, slowly poisoned by her body." Naruto was devastated by this news, and even though he was defending himself, he was also to blame. A moment later, the blonde remembered, "Wait, poison? That's it? Kurama." He began yelling in his head, "Kid, what is it?" The fox answered. "Give me all the power you can," the boy replied. "What's the matter? Ask me later, please now." "All right." Power arose inside Naruto, and he began to glow, surrounded by an orange aura that resembled flames. Think of it as a chakra cloak, but more translucent and less visible, which caused some of the Hyugas in the area to back off. He put his left hand on the woman's forehead and his right on her sagging abdomen in a single, quick motion. How dare he shame his wife? Does this boy have no shame? Hiyashi nearly gave him the backhand, but the man saw that the boy's hands were glowing so brightly white that it was hard to look at them. Attracted by this change, Hiyashi activated his Byakugan and watched as the white chakra flowed through his loved one's body, clearing any harmful substance from her bloodstream and energizing her as it passed through her organs. The hands glowed even brighter, and the light extended from his hands, slowly covering the woman's body. Hiyashi then noticed that the color in his wife's cheeks was returning. Her breathing was returning to normal, and she was calming down. After this was done, Naruto fainted from exhaustion and the woman fell asleep peacefully. "What happened, honorable brother Nisama?" the clone of Hiyashi inquired. "My wife's body was cleansed and strengthened by this boy's chakra, Hizashi. He saved her life by purifying her blood. I'm not sure how he did it, but he fainted from the stress. Bring him inside for some rest and have someone keep an eye on him." As he picked up his sleeping wife in bridal style and carried her inside the house, the head Hyuga gave this order. "Hello. I don't know how you did it, kid, but you earned Hiyashi's gratitude twice now," Hizashi replied, and he walked over to the boy, lifting him up similarly. "Yuki-san," said the blonde. When he understood what the boy was saying, the man said, "Send for Yuki-hime and have her keep an eye on this boy." The current Hyuga obeyed Hizashi's command. After 2 days, Naruto was asleep when he opened his eyes to find Yuki kneeling beside his head and wiping his forehead after he felt something cold and moist moving across his face. "Hi, Yuki-san. What time is it? Weary?" he asked. "Greetings, Naruto-sama. The time is 9 in the morning. You spent the entire day following your rescue of Hiyashi-sama's wife sleeping. I kept an eye on you the entire time." She smiled as she spoke. "Thank you, and I apologize for bothering you," Naruto said, a little embarrassed. Naruto-sama had no trouble, she replied to the boy, but there was obvious pain in her eyes. "A liar. Your eyes exhibit pain, just like mine do. Why?" The boy was saddened and worried. "Why do you care?" the woman said, biting her lip and slashing at the boy. "No one does." The boy remained silent as she responded, "What do you know about pain? As a child, all you do is dream and play before going home to be fed and have a story read to you before bed. I'll tell you, you have no idea what real pain is." The boy turned his face away, bit his lip, and closed his eyes. "I belong to the branch family. We work for the main house as servants." After that, she removed the silk covering from her head, exposing a mark that resembled a swastika with hooks at the end and 2 horizontal lines on either side that faced the main portion and had hooks on the ends. "When we are young, the members of the main house apply this seal to the branch families to prevent non-clan members from using our eyes when we pass away. It destroys our Byakugan. However, when we cross the line, the main branch also uses it. We are in excruciating pain when they use this." Naruto gave her a startled and dejected look. "Thank you for saving my cousin's wife. She was consistently nice to us, but don't expect me to express my gratitude for bringing joy to the main house," she yelled. After a brief silence, he said, "I don't give a damn about that. You can go to hell. You." "Yukihime." From behind them, a man shouted, Hiyashi Hyuga, who was furious and had activated his Byakugan. "You are insulting the savior of my wife and daughter. I came here after hearing cries coming from this room. You seem to have forgotten where you are." He gave her a growl. She looked scared and shied away from him. "Pardon me, Hiyashi-sama, I didn't." She screamed as if she were on fire and fell to pieces in agony when the man raised a half seal before she could finish. "Stop. As Naruto threw Hiyashi to the ground and forced him to release his jutsu, Yukihime collapsed on her hands and knees, gasping for air. "Yuki-san." The boy ran over to her, grabbed her by the shoulders, and then put his hand on her forehead, which began to glow white. After the last of the pain left her head, Yukihime turned to face Naruto and asked, Why? Why are you helping me now that I've told you such terrible things? I agree with Ji-san when he says that there is no excuse for not helping someone in need. In addition, I believe I came to see you like Ine-san, but I'm not positive, he said with a smile. I never even had a home or a family before Ji-san found me a place to stay by myself. I've been living on the streets for a while, hiding from nasty people who want to harm me. In addition, I understand what it's like to bear a mark you didn't deserve. Naruto grinned as he lifted his shirt to reveal the Kyuubi seal and numerous scars. Those scars revealed a variety of injuries, but one in particular caught Yukihime's attention. It was fairly recent, and it was the size of an adult's palm on the boy's right side. Naruto saw this. I was struck on the back of the head by an inebriated shinobi approximately 3 weeks ago. I woke up with alcohol poured over me and tied to a post. The man snapped his fingers after laughing heartily. They emitted sparks, which ignited the alcohol in me. He took another swig of his alcohol and passed out. Fortunately, he didn't use wire, so I only suffered that injury and the ropes burned. One of the worst times was, usually, people ignore me or only give me hateful looks. He smiled and said, when that's not enough, I get chased, starved, kicked, stabbed, or beaten half to death, worse on my birthday. But this guy got creative. It was only partially true. He didn't tell her that he could have gotten worse if Kurama hadn't placed a chakra cloak around him, but it was too slow and he still got burned. The look of dread on Yukihime's face was worse than the one she had when Hiyashi stormed into the room. This child, who was barely 5 years old, had been through more than most seasoned shinobi, yet he still had the will to live. Sarutobi is going to get an earful. Hiyashi was furious. His best friend's legacy, his wife's savior, and his daughter's rescuer had to endure so much, and he was unaware of it. Yuki realized what she had said, and she jumped to embrace him. I apologize, Naruto-sama. I told you all those nasty things. I had no idea. I sincerely apologize, she sobbed. Don't worry. You were unaware. Oh, and don't refer to me as Sama. It makes me uncomfortable. He rubbed her back while grinning. Okay, Naruto-kun. The man appeared enraged as the boy stood up and approached Hiyashi, who was now standing. Naruto halted 3 feet away from the man and bowed deeply. Hiyashi-sama. I sincerely apologize for what I did earlier. He was completely honest when he said, I accept any punishment for them in exchange for Yuki-san being forgiven. No, Naruto-kun. Quit. I don't need you to do that. Then Hiyashi lowered himself to the boy's level and gave him a hug. Obviously, don't stress over that. There won't be any repercussions. Hiyashi-san, Hokage-sama is here and wants to talk to you about that Kumo shinobi that tried to take Hinata. The man's wife entered the room as the door opened, amazed by what she saw but instantly grinning. A slight frown appeared on Hiyashi's face. Thank you, sweetheart, I'll go speak with him. In addition, I need to discuss a few other things with him. Would you like to take a bath in the interim, Naruto-kun? Oh, I'll bring him and Yukihime. Do you want to come along? She grinned even wider. It's a pleasure, Yuki replied. I can do it myself, miss, Naruto continued. Yes, I never had the opportunity to introduce myself. I'm Hyuga Haruko, and I'm not allowed to let a kid take a bath by themselves, she told the boy in a kind but matter-of-fact manner. Our baths are pretty big and you could drown if you don't know where the deep parts are. Pretty, the blonde murmured. What, I'm sorry, she inquired. I mentioned that your name is lovely, he flushed. Thanks, Naruto-kun, let's go now. She laughed. Hiyashi nodded and went to see the Hokage after following both women to the bath. His brother Hizashi was already having a brief conversation with the man when he arrived. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, for keeping you waiting, the head of Hyuga said. No issue, Hiyashi the elderly Hokage replied. I came here to tell you the situation with the Kumo nin Naruto caught. Ibiki claimed that he was a difficult person to deal with, but he eventually admitted to the kidnapping. Additionally, he claimed that the treaty was a ruse to gain the opportunity to bring Hinata back to Kumo with him and have her produce a large number of Byakugan shinobi. Hiyashi broke the glass of water in his hand upon hearing this, but his expression was emotionless. After we sent Kumo a message asking them what this meant, they replied that we had lied about the attempted kidnapping and that you had attacked and injured their head. Nin, the Hokage went on. When they first demanded your head, Hizashi, who was seated next to them, winced and muttered, bastards. The village leader went on, but backed down as soon as they received the filmed confession from their ninja as well as the news that it was not you. but a 5-year-old boy who beat one of their best shinobi. Hiyashi and the Hokage both gave him a look. They must have been very embarrassed. Every man in the room grinned. Speaking of which, Sarutobi inquired, "Where is Naruto and what is he doing?" Hiyashi flinched and responded, "You don't have to be concerned about the boy, Hokage-sama. He's here and is currently bathing with his attendant and my wife." The Hokage grinned and said, "We are taking care of him," which is not what I can say about your part. The Sandaime then stopped grinning. "Hiyashi, what do you mean?" the Fire Shadow inquired. "You heard exactly what I mean. Hokage-sama, I recently learned that he is tortured and that the village makes daily attempts to kill him." "Hokage-sama, weren't you meant to keep an eye on him?" "However, I do." Hiyashi then explain to me, "Hokage-sama, why the boy was almost killed 2 weeks ago." Hiruzen's expression turned pale. "What?" The cage let out a shriek. He informed Yukihime, his attendant, that 2 weeks prior, a drunken shinobi had tied him to a post, covered him in alcohol, and set him on fire. Naruto was left to burn after the drunken nin passed out. Fortunately, the ropes burned before he could perish. Then, among other wounds, burns, whippings, stabbings, brandings, and other injuries, I noticed the distinctive palm-sized burn scar on his body. These are the ones that are visible. He would have passed away long ago if he hadn't had what he had. "Tell me, Hokage-sama, how you allowed this to occur?" Hiyashi erupted. Sarutobi and Hizashi wanted to throw up, but how could a child experience that? Hiyashi, I was aware of the attempts and had Anbu watching over him all the time, but I had no idea that things had gotten this bad. I adore the boy as much as I would a grandson, said the senior shinobi. As the head of Anbu sighed, he said, "I have no doubt that you care for the boy, Hokage-sama, but it appears that not all Anbu are loyal to you. I have decided to take the boy in, to train and maintain him." My wife concurred wholeheartedly with this as well. Surprised, the Hokage said, "But Hiyashi, won't he be despised here? In addition, how are you going to train him? The Byakugan is not in his possession." "I don't believe there will be any issues." The boy used a flawless Hake Hyaku Nijuuhachi show to defeat a Hyuga counselor, omitting any important details. Sarutobi almost fainted. "What? How? I'm not sure, but if he can see the Tenketsu, I can teach him, that is, if I am approved by you, Hokage-sama." After a few moments of introspection, Hiruzen responded, "I need to speak to Naruto first." At that moment, Haruko entered through the open doors. "I apologize for disturbing your conversation. I assumed you would have finished by now," she said softly. "No issue, I was already going to summon Naruto." "How did the bath go?" Hiyashi said. With a quiet giggle, his wife said, "He behaved himself perfectly given that he is a boy. I find this surprising. They typically avoid anything related to baths." She turned to face the men, and they all blushed a little in shame. I asked him about the source of his question and he told me that at his apartment, the only time he gets hot water was between 6 o'clock and 6:05 a.m., and that he was always chased away from the onsen, public baths. The man raised an eyebrow. "The only thing that disturbed me was when he asked if the water is hot all the time." Sarutobi's face lost many wrinkles as he frowned. However, the real shocker wasn't that she looked at the ground and remarked, "I nearly passed out when I saw his body. His entire body was a canvas covered in scars. When I turned on my Byakugan, I saw that almost every bone was broken and had healed several times, and all of his organs showed evidence of prior trauma. Because a quarter of his ribs are visible through the skin, he is also somewhat malnourished. They shouldn't be that way at his age, but he has no baby fat at all." When I asked him if he was eating well, he replied that he usually only eats ramen because most stores either reject him or overcharge him for food that has gone bad. "Ibiki will be busy for a while." The Hokage was now clenching his fists so tightly that blood was dripping from his fingernails. That startled me, and as I held him in the water, his back to her, my illness started to worsen. He saw that I was on the verge of fainting and used his power to save my life. His stomach rumbled, and he began to pant a little. Even though he had not eaten in 2 days, he was still trying his hardest to assist me, even though he was barely able to walk. I asked Yuki to get him a bite to eat. He wouldn't eat until I did, stating that, quote, "Sick people should eat to get better," when she returned with some sandwiches. How can this boy be so compassionate after everything that has happened to him, Kami? When I asked him because I was curious, he told me that he keeps going for the 4 people he cares about the most. When I asked him who they were, he said it was Yuki, me, his Gigi, grandfather, old man, and another secret person. She looked at the Hokage, who blushed and grinned. Additionally, he told me that person was the one who taught him about the chakra system, manners, and chakra. He also learned the true meaning of being Hokage from that person, who was always there to help. He told me that becoming the Hokage greater than all others before him, even Gigi and Yondaime, is his dream. I instructed Yuki to make Naruto-kun a proper meal after we had finished our bath. Everyone in the room nodded and grinned, and Sarutobi flushed once more. Oh no, I apologize for going on and on, but I felt you should be aware of this. I'm going to take a break now. She bowed. Hold on, Haruko. If you think you can stay, please be here so I can see Naruto after he finishes his meal, Hiyashi said. Obviously, the power of Naruto-kun filled me with vitality, she laughed. At that moment, the door was knocked on. Haruko-sama? Enter, Yuki. The woman replied. Yuki bowed as she entered. I'm here to inform you that Naruto-kun completed his meal as you requested. Oh no, that went by so quickly. Did those sandwiches make him less hungry? Haruko worried. No, it wasn't like that. In an anime-style sweat, Yuki and Haruko finished everything on the table in seconds. However, there was enough food for 7 people at the table. Did he finish them in 10 minutes after asking for seconds? The men's perspiration stopped now. Hello. When I looked at him with my Byakugan, I noticed that the food was being absorbed by his system at an incredible rate, slowing down as he finished the meal. I suppose this speed was a subconscious fear that the food would be taken away from him. The men nodded and grinned, and the 2 women giggled. What I can tell from this is that he has a variable metabolism that he can control subconsciously, the men said. Haruko informed the woman, Hokage-sama and my husband, Yuki, would like to talk to him. Hello. And she departed after 2 minutes. She came back with Naruto, who was wearing black pants and a white kimono. When he noticed the Hokage in the room, he became ecstatic and rushed to him, exclaiming, Gigi. Hi, Naruto. The boy was embraced by the elderly Kage, who regarded him as a grandson. Hiyashi then began to cough and said, Naruto-kun, there is something important I wish to ask you, but first would you tell Hokage-sama and me what you told Haruko and Yuki before and in the bath, with details. Staying in Haruko's lap with their hands touching and occasionally releasing his Ranpu chakra to keep her healthy, the boy nodded and began to tell the entire story with even more details. A wise move because the story was far more graphic than they had initially believed. Naruto informed them that he has been viewed as less than human for as long as he can remember. That his first memory was of being punched by his caretaker at the orphanage, that he is chased every 2 weeks and escapes half the time, but when he is caught, he is starved, humiliated, robbed, punched, kicked, mugged, slashed, stabbed, burned, crushed, used as target practice for jutsu, though this is uncommon because it warns shinobi of chakra usage, and many other terrible things that are too painful to recall until the Anbu arrives, sometimes late or never arrives. Oh, Ibiki will be busy indeed. The men were boiling with murderous intent, and the women were crying and embracing him tightly. Why didn't you inform me of any of this, Naruto? The elderly man was enraged. It didn't seem like a huge deal to me, the boy, somewhat alarmed by his Gigi's response, said. Naruto, it was a huge deal. Every time, you may have been killed. When Sarutobi shouted this, the boy shuddered and backed up into Haruko, who saw it. Please relax, Hokage-sama. With maternal affection, she tightened her hands around the blonde, assuring him that he was safe, and said, You are frightening the poor boy. The elderly man turned to face Naruto, who was still trembling a little. I apologize, Naruto. I simply don't want you to go through that kind of pain because I care about you, and the Yondaime Hokage didn't either. The man rubbed his forehead and said, I know it's all right. I didn't want to upset you too, so I just assumed that I had done something to enrage them, the boy said, and Sarutobi's heart broke in two. Please don't withhold things from me in that manner going forward. Grinning at Naruto, he said. Yes. The blonde flashed his sly smile. Aside from that, could you tell me more about your abilities, such as what they do and who taught you how to control chakra? The man gave the boy a soft smile. It was Kurama ni-san. Oh no, he said, averting his gaze. What's wrong, Naruto? Who is Kurama? The man asked tremblingly. The child fidgeted and said, I'm not supposed to tell anybody. What's the reason? Naruto stated matter-of-factly, well, every time somebody mentions about it they get shushed immediately, saying something about a law. Everyone in the room started to appear ghostly as the temperature dropped a few degrees. Naruto, the Hokage interrupted, is Kurama, the Kyuubi and not Yoko? The Hokage asked wearily. I told you that I shouldn't discuss it. The last thing I want is to break the law. The boy continued to look at the elderly man while lowering his chin into his chest. I know the law, Naruto, and you and I and anybody else you tell are allowed. So come on, is it the Kyuubi, the elderly man said. Perspiring, the elderly man hoped not, but to his chagrin, Naruto nodded. Naruto. That demon is dangerous and evil. Talking with it is the best course of action for you. Hiruzen yelled. He could, but the blonde cut him off. Quit it. Don't treat Kurama-ni-san rudely. He's not a bad guy. Even though you are unaware that I am being beaten, he always helps me. You have no knowledge of him. The man jumped in surprise and a little embarrassed that the boy was correct about him not knowing about torture when Naruto yelled at him. However, why did Naruto attack the village the last time if he isn't evil? The Hokage's question was more rhetorical than inquisitive. He apologized profusely for not being able to stop himself. Genjutsu, corrected Haruko, who said he was under a GE. Jutsu, or something similar. Yes, Genjutsu. When he awoke from his Genjutsu, he was already being sealed. He only recalled a creep wearing a mask and having a red eye with an odd pattern. He called it eternal, Mangingu, or Mangekyu, Sharingan deer. Haruko corrected again, laughing a little at the error, but the boy's words still made her a little uneasy. Yes, Sharingan. He blacked out after eternal Mangekyu Sharingan. He told me that, although he couldn't recall who it was, he had previously been sealed in someone else in any case. When the creep with the mask appeared in front of him, he was still sealed inside that person, and then, suddenly, he was inside me. Naruto replied to the man. If it were true, then not only would Uchiha be accountable for the devastation from 5 years ago, but the fox was actually assisting Naruto, which is why Sarutobi Hiruzen felt as though he had lost a couple of his few years left. Are you certain Naruto isn't telling you lies? The Hokage's voice became softer. He is not lying, the boy said with a violent nod. I am aware of the appearance of a liar's eyes. Pardon my impoliteness, but I can attest to that, and he saw right through my lies. A little embarrassed, Yuki said. How do you know, child? Hizashi swore. Well, Mr. Hizashi Hyuga was interrupted by the blonde. Well, Hizashi-san, I observe that most people give me angry looks, so I try to avoid them so they won't beat me. I suppose I simply grew accustomed to observing everyone's eyes and attempting to ascertain how they perceive me. I must have learned how to tell lies from there, the blonde replied. I can also see the pain when people are hurting. How? The man inquired. Everyone flinched when someone said, well, they look like mine. Therefore, don't treat Ni-san badly, he's a decent man. He's just lonely and misunderstood, Naruto said, and then he told them the tale of the Biju's birth and the Sage of Six Path, how ambition and greed ruined the beasts, and how Kurama gave in to despair and rage. The story seemed plausible, and the people in the room were lost in thought. If the beasts were the legacy of the Sage of Six Paths, then the sage himself was real. Haruko was concerned because no one else saw Naruto freeze in place with his eyes closed, but eventually the boy opened them. GG. Kurama Ni-san says you can meet him in person if you take my hand and meditate, the blonde assured the man. Oh, and he told me that don't worry about the danger, you will only be a mental protection, or something. Projection. Haruko was laughing that she was having a good time. Naruto went on, and that he is behind the seal. After a moment of hesitation, Hiruzen took the boy's hand, closed his eyes, and began to relax. He felt pulled into the boy and then found himself in a dark, slightly damp area that resembled a small corridor with pipes of blue and red that were connected by white cubes. Naruto's call for him was heard as he entered the room. Come on, GG. The voice came from one of the lit ends of the hallway where the boy's silhouette was barely visible. The elderly man relaxed a little as he continued walking in that direction and eventually noticed Naruto grinning. Naruto, nice place you got here, with a hint of sarcasm and melancholy, he said. A month ago is when you ought to have seen it. It was a sewer, the boy answered. He then took the cage's hand and instructed him to follow him, and they entered a large, brightly lit room with the same wet floor, but you couldn't see the ends of it except for two large, golden barred doors with a paper with the kanji for seal in the middle where the lock was. At first, the shadows made it impossible to see inside, but as you approached, you could swear that the other side was a different dimension because there was grass instead of the water that the blonde and the Hokage were walking on. Ni-san was present. A contented Naruto said, you brought a guest kid, I see 2 of them. The Biju grinned. Haruko was standing there, looking perplexed, when Naruto and Hiruzen turned to look behind them. Why am I here, oh my? She asked, a little dazed as she looked around. Haruko, did you ever close your eyes and unwind while Naruto and I were in here? Sarutobi raised an eyebrow in question. I suppose I did, she smiled, blushing slightly in embarrassment, and said, I can't help that Naruto-kun's power is so relaxing, and when you touched his hand he channeled even more. It doesn't matter, I'll let you stay if you're willing to talk, you are a good person, according to what I understood from the kid, and one of his favorites, Kurama said with a smile, making Haruko smile even more broadly and Naruto flush. She drew the blonde closer and said, he is a very good and kind boy. Oh. The Hokage pretended to cough. Pardon my impoliteness, but I think we should talk about more important things. Everyone else gave a nod. Now, Kyuubi-san, I wanted to verify some extremely distressing things that I had heard from Naruto, he said gravely. If it's okay with you, could you tell me the brief version of what you told the boy about the Sage of Six Paths and the night you escaped? Kurama nodded and started to tell him everything he had told Naruto about his birth, including a brief but unimportant account of his upbringing and, of course, the day Konoha was destroyed. He went into a little more detail about this event as follows. Do you know, Naruto, when the seal of a female host is at its weakest? The fox inquired. The boy simply shook his head back and forth. The weakest part of her pregnancy is when she gives birth, he replied. What is meant by pregnant? Asked the boy, who received a drop of sweat from everyone but Haruko. The woman smiled and replied, it means when a woman has a baby in her belly. Oh. The boy whispers the final sentence, I remember now. Now don't inquire as to how infants are placed there, an embarrassed Hokage said. Not necessary, I am already aware, with a straight face, the boy stated. I'm not interested in that stuff, at least not yet, based on what I found out. Oh, how did you learn about it? Haruko inquired in a kind, maternal voice with a dash of extra interest. I discovered what pregnancy means there, to the blonde sighed, earning the cage a cold glare from Haruko. Gigi should learn to hide his smut better. The old man swallowed, but the fox intervened to save him. As I mentioned, the seal was weak and my previous host had just given birth. I wanted to leave and flee. I didn't mean to destroy anything. With sadness, the Biju replied. However, that masked jerk broke the seal, made me go crazy, and projected himself inside my host. I don't recall anything after that until I entered Naruto. Kurama now displayed a hint of anger. Either the fox was telling the truth or he was a master liar, but since Naruto also trusted him, the man chose to believe the first Hiruzen, who had experience with this because he had to be on his toes as Cage of Konoha, was looking for signs of deception in the fox's expression but found none. So, Kyuubi-san, that's all you can recall from when you broke out of Kushina-chan's seal? With fatigue, the man inquired. Yes, and give me the name Kurama, if I ever find th, the fox replied, but the blonde interrupted. Kushina was Ni-san's former host, right? A curious Naruto inquired. Kurama and Sarutobi froze. The old man found himself in a tight spot after the tongue slip. I recall that girl. She was such a hothead, Haruko replied. She must have had red hair for that reason, she laughed. Haruko-san, what do you mean? The blonde inquired. The woman went on, well, she had red hair, was tomboyish, and had a really bad temper. I recall that when she first joined our class, she was called Tomato, because of her hair and because she was a little overweight, and she was made fun of. The other humans in the room seemed a little depressed. Naruto knew that it was improper to make fun of people, and Sarutobi remembered her. But then it got worse until one day half of the class cornered and started making fun of her, and she beat the hell out of them, Haruko said with a smile that made everyone in the room shudder, including Kurama. From then on, she was called Akai Chishio no Habanero, red hot-blooded chili pepper. Her name, I believe, was Kushina Uzumaki. Yes, she was that. All of my Konoha hosts were Uzumaki, as I now recall. She was expecting you, Kit, he remarked with a smile. Sarutobi's situation was not looking good down below. Naruto Sarutobi was drenched in perspiration. You were aware. The boy's face was dark except for his mouth, and that was all he could say. I apologize, I did it to keep you safe, but I didn't think that. Hiruzen wanted to find a suitable method to inform the boy. Why did you not inform me? I did it to keep you safe, Naruto. You would be in danger because your mother had strong enemies. You would have been in danger if we had told them she had a son. The Hokage was frantically attempting to soothe the boy. Kurama, who could sense the boy's feelings but chose to remain silent, watched as tears streamed down the boy's cheeks. Additionally, it is very discreet that I am the only Uzumaki in the village. When he realized his error, he said, causing the cage to grab his head. Who was my father? Naruto questioned in a low voice. I'm not sure. As he responded, the man put on his best poker face. My father was Who? The boy asked more loudly, without yelling. I have no idea, Naruto. The village chief began to perspire. Avoid lying to me. Why are you lying? Naruto asked, looking up with burning white pupils and teary eyes. Why do you not tell me? You have no idea how many times I've fallen asleep while crying. How come I feel like my parents hate me every night? That they left me to die after giving me to the Yondu to seal the Kyuubi in me? When you were forced to eat in a dump, do you realize how awful it is to see that every other child has a parent, or even someone who looks out for them? Do you? The boy broke. He couldn't believe what was happening inside the boy, and Hiruzen was on the verge of losing it. You didn't know anything about my parents. Despite my repeated questions, I couldn't tell if they were dead or if they abandoned me to perish. Tell me, now, why you continue to keep them hidden from me? As the echoes of the boy's words repeatedly struck the old cage, his knees buckled and he fell on his butt, still staring at the boy who was incredibly depressed but not angry. I made an effort to shield you, Naruto, from the council and foreign policy. If your parents had discovered that you were their son, they would have done everything in their power to have you killed. Please know that I did everything in my power to assist you, Naruto. The man bowed. I'm going to ask you again? With that gaze, the blonde could break through rocks. With his eyes closed, Sarutobi exclaimed, Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage. The boy wept silently, and his eyes briefly widened before closing. Please pardon me. I know I let you down and I know I hurt you a lot. The Hokage bowed profoundly. I've long since forgiven you. The cage turned back to face Naruto as he replied, I decided that if you knew and didn't tell me you had a good reason not to. But be aware of this. You once told me that trust is hard to earn and easy to lose, and that you have to give even more back to earn it. The boy closed his eyes. You didn't trust me to know who my parents were, and you didn't trust me to keep their identities a secret? The boy's yell caused the cage to start crying. Today you have gained my forgiveness for this, but you also lost my trust, and it will take a lot to get it back, Hokage-sama. If you told me to keep this a secret, they could have roasted me slowly and I wouldn't have talked so as to not disappoint you. The old man was extending his arm as though he wanted to grab the boy when Naruto turned his back on him and said, he was no longer GG, Naruto's grandfather. Those final words hit the man like a ton of bricks in the heart. I comprehend, Naruto. Please don't hate your parents, even though I deserve it for disappointing you. They wanted to see you grow up and loved you more than anything, but they were killed by Kurama-san's claw. Kurama turned away and looked down. Grinning, Naruto turned around and said, hate them? I want to hate them, but why? The others blinked twice in bewilderment, like in an anime. They gave me a brother and a friend and died defending me in the village. I can look up to them because they were wonderful people. Please wait. Hokage-sama, I swear that I will pass you and your father before claiming your seat. He raised his fist in a sort of straight punch motion, saying, I will be waiting. Kurama mentally reaffirmed his promise to protect and assist Naruto, and Haruko kissed him on the cheek, making him blush. I also want my dad's jutsus, Hokage-sama. Naruto stated this with seriousness. Hiruzen assumed a contemplative stance. That presents a challenge. I could give you the jutsu scroll, but it could be taken from you or end up in the wrong hands. Although I am aware of your strength, you lack the capacity to defend it. It didn't help that he was the demon brat, which was a world of trouble in and of itself. Naruto first pouted a little, but he accepted the man's reasoning after hearing tales of the Hiraishin and Rasengan's power and realizing that most people would die to obtain them. I'll perform better, though. I'll covertly teach you the Hiraishin and a few other exercises with my guards. They are aware that they served as your father's guards, but you will need to adjust it on your own. Additionally, you can't use it until you're genin. Make me a promise, Sarutobi said, and the boy made a pledge. As for the Rasengan, Jiraiya, your father's sensei, is the only person I know who can do it, and he will be abroad for the next 5 years. When he returns, I'll check to see if he wants to teach you. Agree, said the boy. You ought to return. It's already been an hour, and the people outside may become anxious. You lost the kid's trust, so watch out that he doesn't lose faith in you or Konoha, Kurama said, and the cage gave a resolute nod. Before we depart, I must inform everyone that the topic we discussed tonight regarding the parents of Naruto and the Uchiha is a top secret S-class matter. You are free to tell anyone you want about your parents, Naruto, but try to keep it a secret from everyone except your closest friends and family to avoid danger. Think of this as shinobi training, even though I know it is tempting, especially when people are making fun of you. Shinobi are constantly entrusted with secret information, which they are not allowed to share with anyone other than specific people. Additionally, Haruko, you may tell Hiyashi what happened here, but only in a secure area, and make sure he understands that doing so will result in his death. After nodding, Naruto and Haruko turned to Kurama to bid him farewell. Also, Ni-san, why do you refer to Hokage-sama as a youngster? When he asked, Hiruzen and Haruko turned to face the fox. Sarutobi grinned and sweated, and Haruko laughed. Kit, he may be old by your standard, but I have lived for centuries. To me he is little more than a toddler. Naruto grinned and said, then I guess I should call you Kurama Jii-san, hehe, instead. When Kurama asked, why you little, newborn baby, she smiled. Everyone else thought it was very original, by Ni-chan. Naruto grinned. We will meet again, Kit. An Anbu wearing an ox mask snapped, Hokage-sama, please snap out of it. After Naruto's mindscape, the elderly man looked a little worse for wear, but he recovered quickly enough to answer the phone. The cage asked, what is it, Ox? As though he had just awoken from a bad dream. The Anbu knelt on one foot and touched the ground with a fist, saying, thank Kami, you are okay. Sir, I came to tell you that the council has called for a meeting to discuss the Kumo situation. It has already started. Naruto, who had just regained consciousness, was attentively listening to the discussion without remembering to turn off the chakra in his eyes. With a smile on his face, Hiruzen said, I see I must get to them immediately, but I also have something critical to discuss here. What to do? I know. His idea surprised him. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, shadow clone technique, was yelled by the elderly Kage as he stood up and crossed his middle and index fingers immediately. A second Hiruzen materialized close to him. Sarutobi halted his matter-of-fact speech and froze in place, staring at Hiyashi, who had his eyes as wide as saucers and was perspiring lightly. Hiyashi, I apologize for leaving on such short notice. I gave Haruko permission to give you all the information that I have acquired here, but note that it is an S-class secret punishable by death. I will leave my clone here to talk to instruct Naruto on some small things like. The frozen Kage, on a stick, pleaded, Hiyashi, please tell me it is not like what I think is. With his head lowered and his eyes closed, the man exclaimed, I'm afraid I cannot lie, Hokage-sama. With a sigh, Hiruzen turned to face 10 identical Narutos grinning at him. All of the boys exclaimed, hey Hokage-sama, this is so cool, at once. Although Hiyashi was pleased that the blonde was treating the village leader with the appropriate deference, he couldn't help but notice that the boy's manner of speaking had changed. Nevertheless, he kept his suspicions to himself. When the Kage said, Naruto, how did you? The Anbu intervened. Hokage-sama, the meeting, we must go now, exclaimed Ox, who maintained his composure despite being equally intrigued. After saying goodbye and leaving his own clone behind, the Hokage sighed again and departed with the agent. The clone Kage inquired, Naruto, when and how did you learn that jutsu? Since I forgot my Shinsogen no jutsu active, I watched you perform it. Normally, I would need to practice to get this right, like with the 8 trigrams 64 palms, and 8 trigrams 128 palms. But this jutsu was fairly simple. An recalls that in the original Naruto learned this jutsu from a scroll without anyone to demonstrate it to him. He was exhausted from fleeing shinobi. After a few hours, he saw how chakra moved. He has a little better control and saw an example in front of him. How are you, Naruto? Asked the anxious elderly man. Yes. Why wouldn't I be? In a cute way, the boy tilted his head to the side. Because if you make too many clones of this B-class kenjutsu, it can kill you. If I create that many clones, even I get exhausted, it drains you of a lot of chakra, the Kage replied. Oh, then there's no issue. Using the Shinsogen, I discovered that I possess more chakra than the majority of ninjas wearing those green vests. I believe their name was Shuenin. He smiled and added, when I use my chakra, Ni-chan fills it as well, so I don't get really tired unless I use it too quickly or in one go. The elderly man let out a long sigh. Today, they're Chunin, Naruto. The man asked Naruto, giving up on arguing with the boy, and if that is the case, I will teach you how to use the jutsu properly, but promise me that you don't go overboard with these techniques, at least until you get your Hite 8. The blonde nodded contentedly. I'm not kidding, Naruto. Unless it's a life or death situation. Wait for Kurama-san to replenish you if you feel even a little exhausted before using it. Make me a promise. Grabbing the boy's shoulders, the man said. On my Nindo, I swear. With a grave expression, he said and pushed the clones away. That was as effective as putting a deadly blood seal on the child. He never broke his word, especially when he did it to his Nindo. Ahem. Forgive my disrespect, Hokage-sama, but I wish to ask the boy how he learned my family's advanced taijutsu moves, inquired Hiyashi. No issue. Hiyashi. They turned to Naruto, who was still holding Haruko's hand but was now standing up because he wanted to give her time to heal after her legs fell asleep while the boy was sitting in her lap. I'm also curious, they said. 5 months after his birthday, Naruto told them about the time he was practicing Shinsogen and Sojin Seishin when he saw Hinata about to be attacked by a bear and was ready to intervene to save her when he saw Haruko use the 8 trigrams 64 palms to defeat the beast. I could see how she did it while my jutsus remained in place. It resembled a deadly yet exquisite dance with a cute expression that straddled the line between pout and anger. The boy flashed his foxy smile and said, I tried to do it myself and got it down in 4 days. After I got the basic movement I just upgraded and finished just as that bad man was taking the girl. Hiruzen was using his jaw to wipe the floor, and Hiyashi was on the verge of slapping himself awake to realize how talented this child was. Had he learned one of their most powerful moves in 4 days without any training or experience, and recreated its more potent variation in 2 other days? He was even more convinced now to take the boy in for 2 reasons. First, he could be a great addition to the clan's friend list, and second, he didn't want the boy teaching more vicious people the Juken's fighting techniques and weaknesses. Oh my, Naruto-kun, I'm not that good, Haruko giggled, blushing a little because Naruto had just complimented her movements that day and she felt somewhat honored to have been the boy's first sensei teacher, even if unofficially. You are, indeed, like a flower in the wind. You moved. I wouldn't have noticed any movements if I hadn't been using Sojin Seishin. I was fortunate, he chirped. Remember that one, Naruto-kun, Haruko said, blushing even more and giving the boy a hug. Mothers get that way when they defend their babies, she said, but then she realized her error when she felt the boy's chakra becoming restless through her hand. I want to be like that for you. She smiled as she spoke to the boy, who jumped up in shock at once. What are you saying? The boy was curious to hear her out, but he was still a little upset. Well, after Hokage-sama has finished describing the shadow clone, ask him. She placed one hand on the blonde's cheek and another on her lips in a I'm not telling pose. I'm sure Hiyashi told him what I mean. With stars in his eyes and a slight pout, Naruto turned to face Hiruzen. Ahem, Naruto, as I mentioned, the professor began his lecture, but Naruto raised his hand in a school-style salute. The Kage Bunshin is an advanced kinjutsu that is primarily used for espionage. Haruko smiled and said, it means spying, dear. The boy then dropped his hand. It is used for spying because it creates an identical, that is, exactly like the original, clone of the user. The Hokage went on the night before the test. Naruto had a "the fuck is this shit" expression, like a student, and the Kage rubbed his temples. After it is dispelled, it transfers, that means it sends, the information it learns back to the user. He attempted to explain it so a child could understand, but failed. Haruko chirped, let me explain, Hokage-sama. Are you aware of what movies are, Naruto-kun? The boy nodded, and she explained in a motherly manner, well, imagine that the clone makes a movie of what he goes through, and when you dispel it, that means stop using it and send it away. At that moment it gives you the movie of what he did, or learned, back to you so you can play it in your mind. Oh, so when I disp, I get its memories. You mean to send it off? As he looked at the Hokage, the boy said, his eyes wide with comprehension. Hiruzen asked, Haruko, how did you do it? As the men began to perspire, he expressed his disappointment that despite being the professor, he found it extremely difficult to connect with the child. You forget that I have a girl the same age and a nursing baby, she replied, laughing. The elderly man lowered his head between his shoulders. As the Hokage, he was deficient in this area because he had abandoned his wife to raise their children, but he soon recovered and turned to Naruto. So, Naruto, do you now understand the shadow clone? The boy gave a nod. All right, he gazed interestedly at the blonde. Now, before we get to the main topic, I want to ask you about your abilities. Naruto shared with the man what Kurama had told him about his Ranpu chakra, its healing properties, and its progeny jutsu, the Shinsogen and the Sojin Seishin. With Hiyashi and Hizashi nodding in agreement, Hiruzen remarked, it is a wondrous power indeed. It gives me an idea. How would you feel about learning medical jutsus, Naruto? The boy is instantly intrigued by the term, jutsu. I'll have someone teach you when you're 7 years old. The boy sulked at having to wait, because you'll be busy using the Hiraishin and there will be a surprise if you accept it. Haruko and the Hokage laughed as the boy cocked his head to the side, nearly forming a question mark on top of his head. Well, we got right to the point. Would you like to live here, Naruto? With a hint of suspense, the grinning elderly man said. Even though it was already night, Naruto's expression was clueless, and a crow flew in the distance. He glanced at Haruko, who nodded, and then at Hiyashi, who followed suit. Hiruzen didn't finish because he saw Naruto in Haruko's arms, sharing a strong embrace. I know that this may seem like a dream, but that's a yes, in my opinion. All right, I'll make the required preparations. The Hokage said, "Poofed, out of existence and good night to all of you. Naruto, be sure to behave yourself." After releasing the hug, Naruto approached Hiyashi and his brother, paused 2 feet away from their table, and bowed deeply to the man. "I'm grateful, Hiyashi-sama," he uttered those words. The men flashed a small smile before returning to their expressionless demeanor. "Naruto, it wasn't a problem. I apologize that I am unable to adopt you due to the laws and regulations of my clan, but I can offer you a permanent guest position. I believe this is for the best because it will stop some of the clan's incooperative members from using the clan seal on you. But please think of me as your father," Hiyashi said, causing his brother to wince a little. "I'll also teach you the Juken techniques of the clan." Startling Hizashi, he said. "But aren't those methods secret, Hiyashi-sama?" Naruto inquired. "Well, there are rules pertaining to branch and main family structures, but you are not affected by them," the man replied. "I guess nobody made rules concerning non-clan members, since the Juken is only useful with the Byakugan." Both Hyuga males smirked at the last part. "Well, I guess you can," Hiyashi said, but the door guard cut him off. The guard declared, "Hiyashi-sama, Hinata-sama wishes to enter." "Get her inside." The man answered. A young girl who shared the family's milky white eyes and short dark blue hair came in. Hinata is a sheltered princess and has little interaction with boys outside her family. Sama, I understood that Ka-san was here and she wanted to continue, but then she noticed the blonde boy with whisker marks on his face looking a little dazed at her, but then he smiled, which made her blush a little and start to fidget. "Yes, my dear?" Although she was obviously enjoying her daughter's reaction to the boy's presence, her mother asked. "Hanabi-chan has been crying for a while, and the caregiver is at a loss for what to do." She continued to look at Naruto out of the corner of her eye as she spoke. After telling the blonde that Juken lessons begin tomorrow and that he will be training with the young girl behind him, the boy walked over to Hiyashi and waited for her to finish speaking before bowing to her. "Hi, this is Naruto Uzumaki. It appears that we will be training together." He extended his arm to the girl and said, "I wanted to take on his father's family name, but I decided it was not the right time." She took a small leap back and hid behind her laughing mother. "I'm Hinata Hyuga, hee." Behind the woman with only half of her face visible, she stammered, still holding on to her mother's kimono. "Well, Hinata-chan, those are really impolite. Get out of there and give the boy a proper greeting," she said in a gentle reprimand. But Hinata attempted to object, but her mother's gentle hand pushed her in the direction of the boy. When Naruto's hand was extended and she turned away in fear, the blonde became a little depressed and began to turn away as well. He withdrew his hand and held it in his other hand. He said softly, his eyes sad, "I see, I guess you don't want to touch me either." The girl was taken aback and felt as though she had done something wrong. "Naruto-kun won't harm you," Hinata-chan. Haruko reprimanded Hinata in a kind and maternal manner, saying, "He is the one who got hurt saving you from the bad ninja that night." When the little Hyuga realized what she had done, her eyes widened in shock, but she then put on a sad expression and raised her trembling arm to the boy, saying, "Thank you." With a quick sly smile, Naruto reached out and took the girl's hand, saying, "It was no problem." Haruko laughed and rose from her seat, saying, "Well, I better go check on Hanabi-chan." Hinata flushed profusely until he released his hold. "Would you like to meet the baby sister of Hinata-chan, Naruto?" She uttered those words. After bowing to Hiyashi and Hizashi, who nodded, the boy nodded and departed the room with Hinata and her mother. "Are you certain that what you are doing is sensible, Ni-sama? The elder council will be a problem for you. Did Hizashi ask your brother?" "Hizashi, I know that the future will be challenging, but I believe that the explanation I provided to Hokage-sama will be adequate because the majority of the council has witnessed what Naruto is capable of. If not, I will remind them, whether they like it or not, who is in charge of this clan. The boy is really special, and I owe it to Minato to look out for his well-being. I also believe that having him as a clan friend will pay off in the long run. Additionally, since he also saved your life, I expect you to support him in any way you can." Hiyashi grinned at his brother, and Hizashi arched an eyebrow. He was then given a report scroll by the Hyuga head, which Hiruzen discreetly gave him. H87, report number 2765. Topic: Relations with Kumo. The Konohagakure Council demanded explanations from Kumo's relations department after we obtained a confession from the head ninja from Kumogakure who was captured by Naruto Uzumaki attempting to kidnap Hyuga Hinata. The outcome shocked us. In addition to demanding retribution for violating the head nin's diplomatic immunity rights, they denied the attempt. Here are the specifics. They threatened to go to war if Hyuga Hiyashi wasn't turned over, dead or alive. The matter was settled when a videotape of the accused shinobi's confession, conducted without physical torture, was sent. It revealed that he had been told to carry out the kidnapping and that a 5-year-old child named Naruto Uzumaki had defeated him without killing him. Report conclusion signed by Anbu T and I Division head Morino Ibiki. Hizashi raised an eyebrow at his elder brother as he read the letter with a sense of dread, wondering why his brother claimed to be in danger, since if Naruto hadn't caught the Kumo Nin, Hiyashi would have had to submit to the Cloud's demands. He looked at Hizashi, who was staring at the floor, and Hiyashi grinned. "Hizashi, you know that if the worst happened I would have surrendered to their demands," he said, the man with his branch member brother opening his mouth to say something but being stopped. "But the council would have done anything and everything to stop that from happening, and knowing they would have most certainly killed you and let you take my place, and I know you were brave and foolish enough to accept that fate. I could never pay back Naruto-kun for all that he has done. He has given my wife a chance at a normal life, saved my beloved brother's life, and saved my daughter from a fate worse than death. Even though I am aware that customs have kept us apart and that neither you nor I can see each other on an equal basis, I still value our relationship. Additionally, Naruto-kun made sure that our relationship would endure. I would gladly give my life to that boy if he wanted it." Hizashi wanted to object, but he was unable to see the obvious truth in his brother's statement. "But all that boy wants is a family and to be Hokage. I think he can succeed, and I'll support him in doing so. If that means going to war with the council, I'll do it. Damn those old farts," he said, causing his brother to laugh. The two 5-year-olds followed Haruko as he opened a slider door in another area of the compound, where a Hyuga branch member was trying to calm a crying baby girl by gently bouncing her. The Hyuga matron said to the woman, "Let me have her Keiko." "I have no idea what transpired, Haruko-sama. She was contentedly sleeping for a minute before breaking down in tears. I tried rocking her, feeding her, changing her diaper, and even singing to her, but it didn't work," Keiko explained. "Don't worry, Keiko. Keep in mind that infants will occasionally cry for their parents." Haruko picked up Hanabi from Kiko's hands and began shushing her, bouncing her up and down, and telling her that mommy is here in an attempt to calm the woman. All it took for Naruto to realize something was amiss was for the infant to open her eyes slightly and turn to face her mother. "I believe Haruko-san is in pain." The woman jumped with surprise and concern as he said, "I had an idea," he said, and approached the mother who was holding her breath. Since the room was heated, Hanabi was only dressed in her diaper. Naruto then charged Ranpu chakra in his index and middle fingers, making the tips glow a little. He then moved his fingers to her head and she kept crying. Continuing down her throat, he went for both arms and got to the chest area, and Hanabi still didn't stop. He then went below the belly button, and that's when she quieted down but was still sobbing. When Naruto moved his fingers, she took a second but started crying again. He then placed his fingers back and she stopped crying again. That's when it hit him. Her belly is hurting. He grabbed Haruko's arms and said, "I'll keep her in working condition by flashing my chakra." "Ah, Kami!" all the women, with the exception of Hanabi, exclaimed. They all hurried out the door and went to Hiyashi's office, with Haruko grabbing the baby's blanket and wrapping her in them while Keiko went to get some other items, like her formula and such. Haruko ignored the guard at the door and stormed into the room, since he wouldn't have done anything anyhow. "Hanabi is having a problem," she yelled, but didn't fully scream. Running in the compound at night was unusual, so Hiyashi and his brother braced themselves for anything. The doors slammed open, Haruko panting and holding Hanabi, saying something was wrong with her. Hiyashi and Hizashi were in his office, finishing up the training program for Naruto and Hinata, when his senses detected that someone was running towards his office. Leaping from his seat at the table, the man ran to his wife's side. "What's the matter?" the anxious father inquired. "I'm not sure, but Naruto found out she has stomachaches." That was all. Hiyashi needed to realize that things could get really bad, she said. "Haruko, you take Naruto to the hospital, and I'll take Hanabi to the doctor," he said, removing the infant from the mother's embrace. "But she attempted to object, but Hiyashi intervened. "Haruko, if I go alone and you are aware of the situation, I can arrive there more quickly. Have faith in me and let me handle this," he replied. "I'll accompany you, Ni-sama." Hizashi, who was a few feet behind his brother, said this while striking a running pose. Haruko grabbed Naruto and Hinata, because she didn't want to be left out, and hurried out of the compound after Hiyashi nodded, and they both vanished, climbing to the roofs. When they arrived at the hospital in record time, they went to the clerk, where Haruko wasn't looking very good herself because she hadn't been exercising because of her illness. Hinata was holding her mother's right hand and panting heavily, and Naruto was still holding the woman's left hand, looking fine and flaring his chakra every 10 minutes or so. When Haruko saw the blonde, the woman behind the desk sneered at him, looking like an angel in white, but he ignored it for the moment. "Hello. My daughter Hanabi and husband Hyuga arrived earlier, in a panic," she said. "Please tell me where to find them." "To the left, in room 325, there with Dr. Mamoru. They arrived 10 minutes ago," she replied to the woman, but then she turned to face Naruto. "But if you decide to visit them, please wait outside." She pointed to the boy, who appeared dejected, and sneered once more. The Hyuga mother had her Byakugan active and was glaring at the hospital worker with a menacing, angry glare, and a moment later the clerk was pinned to the wall behind her desk, Haruko's right hand grabbing her hospital coat and her left palm stretched knife-like to her throat. "Never again should you call him in my presence, or any other, for that matter," she snarled at the clerk, but as Naruto grabbed her ankle and pumped a lot of Ranpu chakra into her, she felt a wave of calmness wash over her. She then turned to face the boy, who was attempting to pull Haruko away from the woman by shaking his head back and forth. After calming down, Haruko let go of her Byakugan and removed her hand from the woman's throat, leaving the other hand on her clothing. "I wouldn't have forgiven you, so you're fortunate that Naruto is. For the record, your job would have been the least of your worries if he hadn't stopped me." Haruko snarled again, let go of the woman, took the two kids' hands, and left to locate room 325. They quickly located it and went inside, where they saw Hiyashi standing on a chair with his sleeping infant daughter and a young-looking doctor with brown hair clamped to the back of his head and square glasses resting on his nose. See Aizen from Bleach with the clamp. "Hi there, Haruko-san. You must be the mother of Hanabi-chan." The doctor smiled and said, "My name is Dr. Mamoru." "Sensei, doctor, teacher, how is Hanabi?" the woman asked after nodding and bowing to the man. "Is she okay?" "Yes, she is fine," Mamoru said with an even bigger smile. She was experiencing pain due to a bowel obstruction in her small intestine. Since it wasn't yet serious, we gave her some light syrup medicine to help her feel better. Although it's a common condition for children this age, I'm shocked that you discovered it so quickly and prevented it from becoming more complicated. Most parents are unable to recognize the symptoms and bring their kids in when the issues worsen. If treatment is not received, it can cause intestinal rupture and even death. Holding his hands in an "I don't really know" manner, he shook his head and said, "I suppose having the Byakugan can help see things like this. In reality, we don't use our Byakugan at home except during the day for training or for special circumstances." "Privacy issues," Haruko said with a deep sigh of relief. The boy was a little perplexed when she said, "Naruto-kun deserves all the credit for the discovery." He turned to face the physician and asked, So Hanabi-chan is alright?" Naruto pumped his fist and exclaimed, "Yada. Alright," as the sensei nodded and grinned, congratulating him on being a bright boy. However, he was careful not to scream because Hanabi was sleeping when he was homeless. He observed many families with their children in the park and realized that it's inappropriate to yell close to a sleeping infant, even though he had never experienced what a family felt like before. Hanabi, however, smiled at her father after slyly opening one eye. "Naruto?" asked the man. He was less than a foot away when the blonde approached. "That's it, gently and with both arms. You're a natural boy," Hiyashi said as he handed the girl to him slowly, observing Naruto holding the infant. Hanabi then squinted her eyes after opening both of her milky white, pupilless eyes wide. The boy was startled and his face lit up with kindness as she shut them and began to gurgle a baby's laugh. After that, Hinata and Haruko grew closer and enjoyed a pleasant family moment together. Hiyashi convened a family council the following day. He chose to let the kids sleep in a little bit because they arrived home rather late, and by the time he called the council, it was already noon. Given that the majority of the council's members were retired elders who resided in the compound, it was formed rather quickly. One council member said, "Hiyashi-sama, why have you summoned us?" "I have called you to announce the fact that I am taking Naruto Uzumaki as my student along Hinata. I will also be allowing him to stay in a guest room of the main house with Yukihime as his attendant per her request." It was like throwing a grenade into an oil tanker when the news was announced. The council only needed it to create a commotion. An older man shouted, "Hiyashi-sama, you can't be serious." An additional one yelled, "He cannot be allowed to stay here. This is an outrage, Hiyashi-sama." A few of them yelled together. Before they sensed a monstrous killer intent on them from Hiyashi, who had activated his Byakugan, they all had something to say and were expressing their reactions to one another. "Are you finished?" the Hyuga head asked, maintaining a tone and face devoid of emotion. He glanced at an elderly Hyuga and said, "Oh, you of all people, I was not expecting to oppose me so much." He voiced his opinion. But Hiyashi-sama, that monster will ruin the clan's image. Aoi. Do you know what the doctors told me 2 months ago about your daughter Haruko? Hiyashi shot back. Scowling, the elder backed up a bit. As a result, Hiyashi closed his eyes. But his dujutsu was still active. They told me that she had at most 6 months to live. Last night Hanabi had a problem, and so, my wife and I took her to the hospital. After Hanabi was given the all clear, we also went to check on Haruko's health. Do you know what happened? The doctors nearly fainted, claiming it was a miracle. Her body was slowly recovering, and they said that if this keeps up, she will be fully recovered in 2 years and have a normal, healthy body. And you know what? The doctors were right. It was a miracle. That miracle's name is Uzumaki Naruto. As you know, he has the ability to use 8 trigrams 128 palms, and that alone is a miracle. But this ability also has the power to cure your daughter, which it's slowly doing. Hiyashi left the elderly man to pick his jaw from the floor and turned to face the council. Need I remind you that he saved Hizashi, my brother and leader of the branch family council, that he rescued Hinata, my daughter and your future leader, from a life as a breeding thing? Hiyashi now showed anger and disgust. Saving our clan's honor and dujutsu at the same time? Need I remind you that? He yelled at the men who were left speechless as they turned away. For all of this, he should be an honorary member of the clan, but he's not asking for that. He's not asking for anything. Our clan members are seen as heartless monsters to the villagers of Konoha, and looking at you right now makes me think that they were right. This shocked most of the counselors. Are you willing to throw a child on the streets? To have him fend for himself? Asked the man. One final anxious man questioned, but Hiyashi-sama, what if the seal breaks and he merges with the you-know-what? And you wish to hasten it? Besides, if it does, I'm sure the boy can control the beast. These phrases caused the council to look at Hiyashi. And if I'm wrong, who do you think that he will come for first? If anger is what drives the beast, then do you want to cause him more pain? The council's men and women appeared pale before they even started discussing Kurama. The majority of them were already persuaded of the boy's virtue and good intentions, but now they were terrified of what would happen in the worst-case scenario. I want to give him support, to help him fight off the beast if needed. This was not even up to debate. I entertained your childish antics and came out very disgusted and disappointed. I will tell you again. Uzumaki Naruto will be my student and guest. Do you understand? And was given sincere nods. He said, good. Then this meeting is adjourned, and walked away. 8 months had passed since that crucial encounter. Haruko had let slip the story about the hospital clerk and told Hiyashi about the S-class secret meeting with Kurama in the distance. Ibiki was beaming broadly. Now, Naruto was using 100 shadow clones to practice his Juken. He had 50 clones that sparred with one another, 30 that practiced more complex moves, 10 that practiced the basic katas, and 10 that walked among the other clones, watching the movements from a distance and correcting any incorrect movements they saw. After using this training method for almost a year and 4 months, the boy was already the best fighter in his age group and could even compete with Hiyashi when they were fighting solely with skill rather than chakra. Hiyashi-sensei was the first person he used it with. Extended flashback: Hiyashi was in a Seiza position in his family dojo, and Hinata and Naruto were imitating him. The dojo was a traditional one, with walls made of paper and wood and a bamboo floor. She wore a black bodysuit, and the boy wore a white top and black pants in an Aikido karate mix style. His ankles and wrists were bandaged. I've been teaching you and Hinata the fundamental Juken katas for 3 months now. Naruto-kun, I want to see how far you've come in mastering them. I want you and Hinata to have a light spar right in front of me without any Byakugan or Ranpu abilities. The Juken master, Hiyashi, said, receiving 2 excited hi-s from both of them. After that, Naruto made a shadow clone by putting his hands in a clone seal. Hiyashi arched an eyebrow. But Naruto responded that the clone would not disrupt the battle and that he would like to have it observe in order to see his own errors from a different perspective. But he would also need permission. The clone moved to a safe distance and took a seat like Hiyashi. After Hiyashi grinned and nodded in agreement. As soon as possible, they bowed, assumed a basic Juken stance, I'm too lazy to write it down, so look it up online, and waited for Hiyashi to give the signal. He allowed the tension to build a little and noticed that Naruto didn't even flinch when Hinata briefly averted her gaze. They both bowed their heads as the Hyuga man held up his hand. Then he yelled, Hajime! Start! While flicking his hand down. Naruto was the superior of the 2 children in a blow-for-blow combat until Hinata, avoiding a palm strike to the face, twisted her body in an unnatural manner and struck Naruto with a leg sweep, causing him to lose his balance and fall face first to the ground. He quickly recovered and launched another attack, but the girl continued to avoid him in ways he didn't think her body could move. To catch their breath, they stood motionless, but they were alert. A loud clap was heard before they could deliver the final blow, which brought them both to a stop. That's enough. To me. Hiyashi commanded them to arrive while maintaining a neutral expression. The children only saw the classic picture of a chilly Hyuga during training. They had long realized that, despite his harshness, his training methods were effective, and occasionally he would smirk while mentally praising them. Panting, they both approached their master and took a seat on the dojo floor in front of him, Caesar style. "Hinata, your movements were terrible," the man said. Closing his eyes, the girl frowned slightly, but she understood what her father was really saying. He was serious when he said that more could be done 2 weeks ago. Naruto assisted her with these translations. "You still need more training. Rest now because you will spar one more time." The man turned to the blonde and concluded, "You focus on moves that need power and speed that you lack. Naruto, your movements were textbook perfect but show signs of heavy repetition. You have been using Kage Bunshin to practice, right?" Receiving a nod from the child, "And so you lose the mental flexibility and creativity that comes from combining different moves. Keep in mind that a powerful Juken user is only as strong as his mind is when using the Juken. A simple poke that nobody knows you can do can be more devastating than a perfect strike to the heart when everybody knows it is coming." He pointed out to the kid whose determination in his eyes. He commanded them once more, "Assume your positions, and Naruto, drop the bands." Naruto looked shocked for a moment before beginning to remove the white bandages covering his wrists and ankles. The black bands had a white chain seal drawn on them, and the wrist ones had tiny, reusable storage seals in the center. Think of it as a pattern similar to a wristwatch. Hinata appeared unsurprised. The accelerometer and force sensor seals on those variable gravity bands adjusted the band's gravity just above the user's tolerance level, preventing them from ever becoming accustomed to them. During training, the boy called him Hiyashi-sensei. "How did you know?" he asked. When Hiyashi responded, his face remained expressionless. "Simple, you were panting just as heavily as Hinata, who gave those to you. An Ambu with a fox mask gave them to me 2 weeks ago. He said it was a present from Hokage-sama to make me strong. He said to never take them off no matter what," he replied with honesty. "And you didn't find it strange that Hokage-sama didn't give you those personally?" Hiyashi asked, raising an eyebrow. The boy was now becoming a little uneasy. "I did, but I thought he was busy, so he sent an Anbu to give it to me. Plus I couldn't see his eyes to tell if he was lying because of the mask." The master of Juken sighed. "Naruto, that Anbu, if that's what he was, tricked you." "What?" exclaimed the boy. Startled, the boy winced and clenched his fists at the remark. "I think he gave you those bands to obstruct your movements if you ever went outside, so you couldn't run if they chased you." Then, in a rare training moment, Hiyashi laughed. Naruto was left speechless when the man said, "Unlucky for them. Thanks to Kurama-san, it actually had the effect of making you stronger. Now take them off, begin your spar and you will see why." The boy did as he was told, taking them off his wrists and setting them down close to Hiyashi. Then he and Hinata both moved into the Juken stance. Then the man yelled, "Hajime!" once more. When Naruto dashed to the side in a blur, not impossible to see. Remember the anime fight between Naruto and Neji when he used the fox's chakra? It seemed that way to Hinata, even though it wasn't that fast. He stopped within 10 inches of Hinata and delivered a powerful palm strike to her chest, sending her flying backwards. What followed could only be described as a nasty experience for Hinata. Before she even reached solid ground, he materialized behind her and kicked her hard in the back, causing her to yell a little and sending her flying through the air while spinning from the waist. Despite landing with cat-like grace, she was a sitting duck due to her severe disorientation when another loud clap stopped the display. Hinata stumbled backwards and the boy rushed in to catch her before she hit the ground, making her blush a little. Naruto was running forward, leaving a streak of white and black behind him, and was about to give her a double palm strike Kamehameha style to her abdomen. When the boy was told, "Naruto, bring Hinata over here so she can rest," he laid her down close to him and gave her a little Ranpu chakra to give her vitality. The blonde looked at his fists and flexed them, still a little taken aback, and nodded when the Hyuga man asked, "See what I meant? From now on you may wear those bands if you choose to, but you must take them off in life or death situations. That is an order." "Hi," was Naruto's response. The man then grinned slightly before turning to face Hinata, who was now seated. He told the girl, who nodded but was still a little depressed, "Hinata, don't let this experience get to you. It was valuable in its own way." With a hint of paternal benevolence escaping his expressionless face, he said, "And if you want I can get you some similar bands made especially for you." She nearly couldn't believe it. "Are really T2-sama?" she asked. He agreed that training for the day was over and teased his daughter, saying, "Of course, if you promise to use them consistently and not throw them away like an old toy you get bored of." "Hi2-sama. I promise on my Nindo," she snapped back at him without blushing. It was Hiyashi who now felt as though he was dreaming. In addition to being one of the few times Hinata didn't stutter, it appears that the boy's mannerisms improved her as well. Naruto merely grinned at the circumstance. We'll continue our meditation by the koi pond. All right, I believe you both agree to end this session early. Flashback concludes he was aware that, despite the fact that it was the day before his birthday, Hiyashi had informed him that there would be a significant event involving the Gentile Fist tomorrow, and coincidentally, that was his worst aspect. Despite having essentially perfected its forms through more than 50 years of combined clone practice, his chakra was simply not prepared for this because it was unique in that its intensity fluctuated. Even though Kurama had stopped fighting the boy's chakra, it was still being forced into the blonde's system, causing internal ripples. As they combined, Hiyashi described this as trying to walk in the rain without getting wet, without jutsu or umbrella. The only times he wasn't experiencing this were when he was full, when the seal would stop feeding him to prevent overloading, or when he was near zero, when he could use pure Biju chakra. From meditation to balancing a leaf in your hand, tree walking, waterfall walking, and even creating new exercises like sleeping while hanging from a tree with your chakra. A clone did this, though, and it fell in the morning. Naruto tried every chakra control exercise he could find in Konoha and mastered them all. His favorite was meditation because it allowed him to speak with Kurama, and he had flawless chakra control, good enough to be called legendary. He even knew how to use the Hiraishin. He smiled sheepishly as he recalled the moment. Extended flashback. About 6 months had passed since the council meeting, and Naruto, wearing the same training gi, had just perfected the water walking exercise that followed the leaf balance and tree walking that Hiyashi demonstrated to him to strengthen his control. Being able to perform numerous clones made this possible because he could now complete months of training in a few weeks. As he continued to meditate in the center of the koi pond, a branch member approached him and said, "Naruto-sama, Hokage-sama calls you to his tower." Then Naruto stood up and leapt over to the man, saying, "Satoshi-san, I appreciate you telling me." He bowed after saying this. The Hyuga bowed back, saying, "Naruto-sama, it wasn't a problem." Smiling, he replied his relationships with the other family members were getting much better, but that's a tale for another time. Now, Naruto was jumping from rooftop to rooftop on his way to the cage tower. Why had the old man called him now? He kept thinking about it, but as he approached, he made the decision to surprise Hiruzen by taking the scenic route to the tower's wall and an open window instead of the usual route to the man's office. He crept up the wall and peered inside the tower before discovering the old pervert reading an orange book called Make Out Paradise. From now on mop. About a man chasing a woman. He tiptoed behind the red-faced, foolishly laughing Hokage, who was grinning broadly over his shoulder as the boy shouted, "Hey, Hokage-sama," from the very top of his chest. The man's robe, hat, and book were all held in place by an afterimage and air pressure. In the following second he was hanging from the roof like a cartoon cat, with chakra. And while he was confused, Naruto unlocked a camera from his wristbands and took a picture that would come in handy later. He also seemed to be laughing, based on the shadows in the corners. Naruto. Never do that yet again. With a gigantic head no jutsu that would have made Iruka proud, the cage screamed. "You wanted to see me, huh?" he said, dabbing at the tears he had shed while laughing. Naruto activated his Ranpu jutsu in surprise when the elderly man waved his hand and 2 puffs of smoke emerged in the shadowy areas of the office. Fuinjutsu. Tomb of Secrets. Shows that Sarutobi slapped his hands together after going through 25 hand signs, apparently failing to learn from his initial error. Seals seeped into the walls from the shadow of the old Hokage. Hiruzen sighed and then heard Naruto exclaim, "That's cool." He then raised his eyes to reveal a blonde boy with a very bright eye, literally, palmed his face, and said to Naruto, "Tell me that you did not see how I did that. You know I detest lying, so I apologize, Hokage-sama," he said, flashing his full teeth as he smiled. "That was what I feared. Never mind, I knew you were an expert at the water walking exercise, which is why I called you here. Is this accurate?" The blonde gave a nod. "All right, so you will begin learning your father's Hiraishin no Jutsu today, just like I said the professor. After months of meditation with Hiyashi, the boy felt like he wanted to jump off the walls, but he still shook with excitement and a tear ran down his happy face because he was only 6 years old. The blonde's expression made the old cage's heart skip a beat, and he pushed the buzzer on the intercom and slightly lifted the seals to open the doors. "Send for the guard platoon. Go-e Shotai. A-N. Look it up," he said. At once, Hokage-sama. The secretary answered. The doors opened in less than a minute, and Genma Shiranui led 3 men inside. "Hokage-sama, You wanted to see us? Genma inquired. Close the doors. The men knew that something serious was going on, but why was a 6-year-old sitting on the couch if this was such a serious matter? Hiruzen gave the order, and they obeyed. The door was once more covered by the confidentiality seal. I know you are among the most devoted shinobi of the Hokage, both past and present, which is why I called you here, Sarutobi said, looking out the window. He then turned his head to them and they saw the dead serious look on his face, asking, am I wrong? At ease, gave way to standing attentively as they all responded simultaneously, no sir. All right, because I have a top secret S-class mission for you that involves SSS or something similar. Now completely oriented and facing the platoon, Hiruzen informed them. They stood silent, but tensed. I need you to teach this boy the Hiraishin in secret, Hokage said, taking a deep breath and holding it for a moment. With a, are you fucking serious expression on their faces, the platoon all blinked with beady-style eyes, Barney Rubble. When Naruto realized this, he took another picture, just for memory, and started to snicker quietly and without anyone noticing. Well, Hokage-sama, could you please explain why I should teach Minato-sama's cherished technique to some snot-nosed brats? Genma inquired. Naruto was too preoccupied with his laughter to realize that he had just been insulted. Hokage sighed, as he had planned to do, and turned to face the boy who was laughing quietly. Come on, Naruto, he said, causing the boy to instantly go into serious mode. A result of training and living with Hiyashi. The blonde nodded and approached the Hokage in front of him. What I'm about to reveal or demonstrate to you three is a secret of the SSS class that carries a death sentence. All three men gulped as he said it with a hint of murderous intent. The professor went on, now tell me, who does this boy look the most like? With the birthmarks on his face, I would say he looks like something else whose mention is punishable by death, Genma said wearily and foolishly, after they all raised an eyebrow before he had the guts to speak. Hiruzen grimaced once more, but Naruto grinned at the fact that he resembled his Ni-chan, despite the fact that he appears to be a 10-story tall demon fox. Naruto was then directly beneath the picture of Yondaime Hokage Minato Namikaze after Sarutobi shifted to the side. Take another look and let me know who he looks like, the Kage gave the order. The platoon froze in place and started to look as white as ghosts, but they looked again with bored expressions. The Hokage of Yondaime. They uttered the same words simultaneously, even stuttering them. Introducing Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki, the son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, to the Hokage guard platoon. Raising his hand, Naruto uttered, sup, and Genma passed out along with the others. Hokage Jii-san, will they be okay? The boy asked, prodding them with a stick. Oh, how he missed hearing Jii coming out of the boy's mouth and addressed to him, Hiruzen said, eyes bulging in surprise as Naruto simply called him a warmer form of his title, and he nodded. A.N. I'm too lazy to pick one, gimme a break. It's 2:08 a.m. After they recovered, they accepted the mission and accompanied Naruto to a remote cave close to the outskirts, where Genma used a low-rank Doden to seal the entrance. The cave was fairly bare and well lit by holes in the ceiling, allowing them to see rocks. All right, kid, stop taking in the sights and listen now in the spotlight, Genma gave the order. He nearly shunned Naruto in front of him. Well, at least you can follow instructions, which is beneficial for the time being. Geez, I have no idea why Hokage-sama wants us to demonstrate his father's method for this gaki brat. Kid wet behind the ear, most likely, he will just boast to his friends and become a target at the very least. Hokage-sama could have waited for him to become a genin. Children only dream. Do you realize that if you Rock finds out about you, this could lead to your death, gaki? The man looked away, picking his ear with his pinky finger, and when he turned around, he was genuinely shocked. The flashing faces of the loving Hyuga family, who took care of him and whom he vowed to protect, that is, to become stronger, which means to learn his father's jutsu, were the only thing holding Naruto's rage in check as his face became partially obscured above his cheeks. The blonde grabbed his seal after Genma's speech was over and opened a kunai he used to practice target practice with Hiyashi. The boy simply cut the belt on his white top. It was tied so well that it wouldn't slip off during training, and let it unfold and fall to the ground, sliding the child's shoulders to the ground as the platoon went on alert, unsure of what the boy would do. The preteen looked like a broken vase that had been put back together with glue, and the squad went a little pale when they saw the faded scars all over his body, some of them shining in the light that filtered through the wall cracks. Then Naruto said, "You're right, children do dream. They keep dreaming of nothing but the best, and I confess that's how I dream too." Being Hokage and defending those who rescued me from the horror of my early years is my dream. Tell me about your earliest memory. Genma-san, what memories do you have of your early years? The blonde inquired. I'm not really sure, the man stammered. Yes, I can. In slow motion, I can still see the punch that the person who was supposed to look after me at the orphanage threw in my face. I still recall my first encounter with starvation, when I was running for my life and only ate moldy bread. I also recall the first sting of the kunai, which struck me in the back. The bat's initial pain as it struck me. When I was burned at the stake, it was the first fire that consumed my skin. Naruto hesitated for a moment when he noticed the men's worried and caring expression. However, I also recall the first time I saw Haruko-san defeat a bear, the first time I felt the warmth of an embrace, the first time I ate ramen, the first time I held Hanabi-chan in my arms, the first night I met my Nii-san, and the first time someone thought of me as human and gave me a home. With pained and joyful eyes, Naruto screamed at the men, causing them to perspire and retreat a step. I can now dream because they saved me from that horrible night terror known as loneliness. He moved in the direction of the men, who retreated even further. Naruto shut his eyes and said, I'm dreaming now. In order to spare them and their children from that terrible experience, I dream of defending the people I love and the village they adore. My dream thus turned into my ambition. His eyes opened, revealing the will of fire blazing in each one like the sun. Because my dream is to be Hokage. All of the men were staring at the blonde with their mouths slightly open when Genma dropped to one knee and the others followed suit. His words, and should your dream become real, the Hokage guard platoon will be your shield, caused Naruto to smile. Yosh, let's get to it. This brat's not going to learn his dad's jutsu by himself now, is he? Hiruzen was observing the scene in the Hokage tower through his crystal ball. Then he said, couldn't have said it better myself, while lowering his hat over his face. 4 days later, Naruto mastered the target seal, and how to use the Hiraishin to send objects to other parts. Thanks to 60 clones practicing with him, as Genma stated, he was practicing with rocks and his clones. Kid, remember that I told you it's like a summoning jutsu but chakra works the other way around? Naruto grinned. Genma pointed to his partners, making the boy curious and afraid. Well, when you use the summoning jutsu you use hand seals in your body as a beacon to keep the window open. The Hiraishin uses only your chakra to keep it open, so if you goof before getting to the other side you get crushed by it. Just so you know, it takes all 3 of us to keep that from happening. Okay, until you get the feel of the jutsu I want you to practice moving rocks with the Hiraishin. Start with ones that fit into your hands and move on to bigger ones. To the surprise of the man, Naruto turned to face Genma with a pout and narrowed eyes. What? Genma inquired. Naruto looked to the rocky cave and said, so that's why we train here. The man sighed with relief. Yup. Now get to it, he said, bending his body and meeting the boy's eyes. Hi. 4 hours later, the blonde and his clones were using hand-sized rocks to make pebbles and sand. All of him appeared exhausted and irritated after noticing this. Genma went to the original. Listen kid, don't lose your cool. With this jutsu, getting impatient could be deadly. It took me and my mates a long time to learn this jutsu, and we are Tokubetsu or special Junin, and we had help from its creator. If it was easy, then the Sandaime would have learned and used it, but it's not. Just take it easy, you got time. I want you to practice like I told you every day here, and when you can move a boulder to the maximum of your chakra reserves, come to me and we will move on the finer parts like sensing the right target and eventually, jumping, a living being. He told the blonde, putting a hand on his shoulder. Naruto nodded, grinning. The boy is seen making his way to the Hokage's office. 2.5 weeks later he knocked on the door after passing the secretary. Come in. He heard and went inside. Behind a pile of documents, he discovered an elderly man tying a rope in a manner that resembled a noose. The man said, Naruto, what brings you here? In a feeble voice. A worried boy said, Hokage Jii-san, are you alright? No, Naruto, I'm too old for this blasted paperwork that's eating away my life, but don't worry about it. What can I do for you? The Kage said, letting out a sigh as he turned to face the boy. Well, I was looking for Genma-san but I couldn't find him. I finished the first part of the training and I wanted to show him, replied the brunette. Hiruzen was taken aback by how quickly Naruto completed that section. A while back, he received a report from the man detailing the training and how challenging it was, requiring 3 Junin to perform the jutsu. He dismissed it, blaming the boy's genes, and called in the guard platoon, which showed up in less than 2 minutes. Hey Genma-san, I finished it, the boy exclaimed, causing the men to perspire. Okay kid, let's go to the training area and you can show us, the man cracked a grin. The boy gave the men beady eyes and chirped, Not the training area since it doesn't have big enough boulders. Let's go to the top of Hokage Mountain. There's some good ones there. Oh okay. Stumbled Genma. Naruto turned to the Hokage just before they left. Hokage Jii-san, why don't you use shadow clones to do the paperwork? I do it all the times with Haruko-san when studying or doing homework. I even have one now studying with her and watching her health G&A. Bye. See you later. He smiled as he left. I know it's an old concept, but it works. The top of Sarutobi's face was now shadowed, and the background was blue after practicing roughly 7 hand signals. He whispered, Tokabestu Kachiyose no Jutsu. Special SJ. While placing his right hand on the desk. Where the man's hand had been, a wooden target that was half a meter wide and 1/4 of an inch thick appeared. The words, in case of realizing something obvious and simple, use this, were written on it. The man then slammed his head against the bullseye, earning full points. At the base of a boulder that was 15 times the size of a double-decker bus, 3 men and a boy were standing on Hokage Mountain. A boy grinned and said, this one should be good enough, which caused the men to perspire. Genma inquired, a little concerned about the response, kid, what do you mean, good enough, for what? What do you mean, for what? For the Hiraishin of course. You told me to send a boulder the size of my chakra to the target seal. But I had to leave a clone at home with a good amount of chakra to study and take care of Haruko-san, so I'm about 2/3 full. He responded with a serious tone that made the men shiver. Genma began to lecture, causing the boy to sulk and retreat to the boulder. Look kid, it's not good to lie. A shinobi should. When he put one hand on it, it vanished in an orange flash and reappeared 30 feet away from a perfectly intact target seal. Naruto has an orange flash. His mother was a red-hot habanero and his father was a yellow flash, so he is orange. I am among the few who agree with Naruto's color choice, believing that if they could use henge, there's no reason to care about the color of their clothing. The blonde could henge into tar and become completely unrecognizable. The men's jaws went awry, giving the impression that Jiraiya had accidentally entered a gay bar. No racism, whatever you call it, they were simply incredulous. Naruto was panting close to them. You were saying? He asked. After shaking their heads, they all turned to smile at him. Well done kid. Well done, Genma said with a toothy, smooth grin. Together with roughly 1,500 shadow clones, they spent the following month teaching the child how to jump living things, perfecting the jutsu, and showing Naruto how to create and apply a target seal. Without writing it down in the end, they were going to put him to the test in the forest outside the village. Okay kid. We placed those 70 target seals that I asked you to make me yesterday all over the village and surrounding area. Each of them has a flag. I want you to get those in under 10 seconds. The child nodded. In case you complain later, I want you to know that your dad could defeat a small army of 700 in that time. In the heat of battle, live targets that move and fight back. You got that? Naruto gave a nod. He always enjoyed hearing tales about his father. Genma produced a large digital stopwatch and set it atop a target seal on a rock. Ready, set, go. The man barely had time to pull his hand before Naruto appeared with the flags and pressed the stop button. After pressing the start button on this device, then the man turned to the watch. 0:32 seconds, not yellow flash level, but it's very impressive. The boy thought of asking, what is your time? After grinning at the compliment. The men then started to perspire and appeared to have stepped on something unsavory. Then, as a dark cloud developed above them, they turned to face one another and gazed at the ground. Then Genma muttered something. Naruto asked, a little concerned about them. Sorry what? 1:21 seconds. Naruto grinned and rubbed the back of his head as they fell to the ground and began to play with the dirt. I apologize for the ambiguous training description. Flashback ends. Remembering this, Naruto chuckled a little, but when he realized he still hadn't put his Juken down, he sighed and dropped his shoulders. After completing his training, he realized he should go relax and watch the sunset. Although he was able to dispel the clones and restore their memories, his control barely improved. Back at the Hyuga compound he walked, though he made a vow to the Hokage that he would not use it until he was a shinobi. He would have flashed there. When he entered after opening the gate, he noticed a Hyuga boy who was a year older than him practicing taijutsu. The boy, who was slightly taller than him, had long hair that was tied with a plain piece of cloth at the shoulder blades. Despite only knowing him for a month or so, he became Naruto's best boy friend. His name was Neji Hyuga, son of Hisashi. He thought back to the day he had met him. After all, it was his birthday, so how could he have forgotten? Extended flashback. The festival commemorating the defeat of the Kyuubi was in full swing on the morning of October 10th. Because old habits die hard, and this one was hammered into him by his caregivers, the orphanage, and the villagers. Naruto was hiding in his room. He was conversing with Kurama while meditating while seated in the lotus position. Hiyashi and his wife were at the hospital for her monthly checkup. The boy yelled, "Kurama ni-san," at the 10-story fox. Naruto had long since figured out how to transform this area, and now, even down to the little animals, it resembled the Forest of Death, Training Ground 44, where Naruto occasionally trained. Additionally, Naruto reduced Kurama's seal manifestation to a body seal consisting of 13 bracelets that encircled his wrists, ankles, and tails. The bracelets were connected by soundless chains to a metal collar that featured the circular seal lock. All of Kurama's damage was repaired overnight, and the area even experienced a day-night cycle. Although Kurama's seal prevented him from using all of his chakra powers, it was still preferable to a sewer. "Hey there, Kit," the local fox said. "Know what day is today?" He feigned ignorance as he asked, I wonder, what could today be that got you so excited?" "Ni-san," sobbed the boy. "Hee, happy birthday, Kit. Sorry I couldn't get you a present. I was only sealed in your abdomen," laughed Kurama. The Biju raised an eyebrow in response to his statement. "Don't need any, after all. On this day I got my Ni-san." He gave them a toothy smile, but it was accompanied by a hole in it. His baby teeth began to fall out because he was a growing boy. Kurama gave him a startled look before the fox laughed and said, "Biwahahaha, what happened to your teeth? Did you scream so much that they fell out?" His response was a mixture of matter-of-factness and pout. "Nope, Haruko-san says that my baby teeth are falling out so I can get stronger ones," he said. "Kid, love to stay and chat, but somebody is looking for you on the outside." The child chirped, "Okay, bye Ni-san," and woke up to see Hizashi holding a Hyuga boy roughly Naruto's age. The man bowed slightly and grinned at Naruto, who had stood up. The man turned to the Hyuga boy and said, "Naruto-kun, I came to wish you a happy birthday. I brought my son with me today so you can meet him. Say hello, Neji." "Greetings. I am Neji Hyuga. If my honorable father is correct, then I wish to extend my birthday salutations as well," the boy said in a very respectful tone, looking a little stiff as he stepped forward and bowed. Naruto was no longer as ignorant or uncultured as he had initially been. Neji's speech left him speechless, despite Haruko teaching him, mostly his clone, about manners and other finer speech patterns. The man who was giggling a little said, "Neji means that he also wishes you a happy birthday." The blonde bowed. "Oh, then thank you both." Smiling slightly at the blonde, the man said, "Neji, I have to go meet with Hiyashi-sama. Why don't you stay here with Naruto and have fun?" He then made his way to the door. Neji replied, "Hi Chichu, honorable father." Then Naruto approached the boy a little more. The blonde asked, "So what do you want to do?" Neji's emotionless reply, "Anything you want to do Naruto-sama," made Naruto wince. "Okay. Then I want to do what you like," the boy said with a sly smile attached. Before Neji could finish his sentence, Naruto got up, changed out of his indoor orange silk kimono that Haruko had given him as an early birthday present after convincing her husband, and put on his training clothes. "Well, I like training. I'm sure Naruto-sama wouldn't like that on his beer." "I love training," chirped the blonde. Neji grinned. He was starting to like this boy, Naruto. Despite the fact that he was a little impetuous, they traveled to the dojo, where Naruto and Neji essentially cleaned the floor. We find Naruto standing above the boy who was on the ground, breathing heavily after a few hours inside. The Hyuga boy questioned, "Why are you so strong?" Naruto, pleased to be training with a boy his own age for once, chirped, "I told you that I love training. I do it anytime I have the chance. Besides, if we would have used chakra, then I think our places would have now been switched, since my chakra is just not suited for Juken other than for short bursts. But still, I'm the older one. Why is there so much difference in our fates?" Neji turned her gaze elsewhere. Confused, the blonde said, "Fates? What does that got to do with strength?" "It has everything to do with strength. It is decided from birth how much power and strength we have. Fate plays favorites. Understand?" A startled Neji turned back to Naruto and began to explain. Naruto saw the same sadness and anger in Yuki that he had when they first met, and he snapped at the boy just outside the door. Someone was listening in on their conversation. With that, Neji turned and left the dojo. "We are destined from birth to follow the path fate drew for us, and we can never escape. Never." Naruto remained in a contemplative, melancholy stance until the listener came in. "That boy has always been like that. Ever since he got the seal on his forehead, he has stopped living for himself. No matter how hard I tried to make him snap out of it, I'm afraid that one day he will let himself die just because he thinks that fate decided it for him." Hizashi spoke with a fatherly voice that had an into it. After that, Naruto bit his lip, clenched his fists, and chased after the boy Neji was practicing in the woods just outside the compound. And it took Naruto 10 minutes to locate the boy using the Shinsogen. Someone else discovered the blonde and started pursuing him without his knowledge. "Lower your hips a bit and relax your waist," Naruto told Neji, who was prepared for the blonde because of the Byakugan. "Thank you," he said without feeling. There was a pause while Naruto observed the boy, who continued to practice. Before the blonde could finish his question, he heard some leaves and twigs rustle. "Listen Neji, I can," he said. When both boys looked around, they saw Junin looking a little tipsy. When Naruto saw his face, he began to back away. Shakily Kurama snarled like a furious beast inside of him. A.N. Deeper, lower tone of Orochimaru's creepy laugh. "Kukuku. I thought I burned you alive, demon. I guess I was too soft on you. I will make sure not to repeat the mistake, Yondaime-sama's mistake, and kill you." About a year ago, the same man set Naruto on fire at the stake. The unidentified Junin withdrew a kunai and hurled it towards Naruto. By this point, Naruto had absorbed some of Kurama's chakra, which helped him focus and relax. The fact that the man made fun of his father also helped Naruto turn on his Sojin Seishin and Shinsogen. The blonde escaped the kunai and ran into the woods, but he neglected to remove his bands. As a result, the aforementioned Junin quickly caught up to him and used another kunai to slash out at Naruto, who also escaped. This time Naruto was on the defensive, leaping and dodging the Junin's blows while the man was on the attack. The blonde then produced his own kunai from the seal on his bands and started to trade blows with the drunken shinobi, who jumped back after narrowly avoiding a Juken strike to his arm. The man used a few hand signals, but his senses detected movement behind him and he was unable to react quickly enough to prevent Neji from striking his legs with a chakra-filled palm strike, which caused him to wobble. He screamed, "You brat!" and gave the boy the backhand. The boy flew back, colliding with a tree and coughing up blood. He threw a shuriken and shouted, "Shuriken Kage Bunshin! Shadow Clone Shuriken!" While doing a few hand seals, the shuriken he threw multiplied to 100, all of which were headed for him. "For defending that thing, I will kill you and blame the demon," he said. Neji closed his eyes and waited for the pain. Accepting his fate, he kept waiting, but it never materialized. He heard Naruto call out to him, "Oi, are you alright?" When Neji opened his eyes, he saw the blonde lying over him, his clothes ripped, his torso bare save for a few bits of cloth here and there, and he was heavily bleeding. Naruto was unable to deflect 7 shuriken that poofed out of existence, leaving 7 holes in his chest. Cringing, Neji asked, "Why?" The Hyuga clenched a fistful of bloody grass and questioned, "Why did you save me? It was my fate to die, not yours." "Because I think of you as my friend and I will protect my friends," Naruto replied with a smile after coughing up some blood. Neji's eyes grew as large as dinner plates as a result. Then Naruto lowered his head until shadows darkened the upper half of his face. "Neji, I know what it's like having a mark that you did nothing to deserve or couldn't do anything about." The Hyuga boy was about to ask, "What are you talking about?" when he noticed Naruto's wounds disappearing and a seal mark appearing on his stomach as he smoked. "Neji, I know just how unfair life is. This guy that you see here is not the first or the last that came for me. There were many times when I cried myself to sleep cursing my fate," Naruto continued, but then, with resolute, hardened eyes, the blonde gazed up at the boy. "If fate said that we must live a horrible life, then screw it. I will change my fate no matter what, and if fate can't be changed, then at least I tried. What I do understand is that it definitely won't change if I just sit on my ass and do nothing about it," said the man. He grinned and turned his fully recovered body to face the Junin, who was boasting to no one that he had vanquished the demon, leaving Neji in awe. "And you know what? It worked," he said. Dropping his weights, Naruto screamed at the Junin. This caused the inebriated ninja to turn in shock. "Hey jackass, you are forgetting something," he growled. "But how? I killed you." In response, the blonde said, "Not even close, dumbass." Then, taking the man by surprise, he charged at him at breakneck speed and struck him in the abdomen with a Juken strike. Rendering him unconscious, he exclaimed, "I won't die before I become Hokage," and then he fell face first. Neji was able to carry Naruto back to the compound in the evening. When the gate opened, Hiyashi and his wife Haruko were already back from the hospital and chatting with Hisashi and Yukihime when they noticed both kids covered in blood and Naruto on Neji's back. They arrived at the children's side with a speed that would have made the Hiraishin envious, and Hiyashi picked up Naruto, who had just woken up, while Neji's father welcomed him. Naruto questioned, "What happened? Did I win?" The adults all said, "That's what we would like to know." Neji then recounted the tale to the adults to report this incident to the Hokage. Hiyashi dispatched a branch member. After they checked his health and found nothing wrong, including with the Byakugan, the blonde began to bounce up and down, earning him smiles from the rest of the group. "So I won. Yada," he exclaimed. Next, Neji drew his father aside. The boy grinned and remarked, "He is a fool to fight his fate like that." With a smile, his father filled him in on Kurama's early life, including how he was tormented and despised. He then explained to his son that he never gave up and altered not only his own destiny but also that of Hinata, Haruko, Hanabi, and even his own, Hizashi. "Neji, this boy may be a fool, but he is definitely something else, don't you think?" "San, father, do you think I could be a fool like him?" Neji asked, nodding. "Why not? You can be a fool if you want. After all, you are my genius son," Hiyashi exclaimed, laughing. Flashback ends. "Hey Neji," exclaimed the blonde. "Hello Naruto-sama." The boy grinned before responding. Naruto rhetorically questioned, "How many times have I told you to leave out the sama?" 163 times if you count this one," Neji replied, grinning a little and answering. Already frustrated, the blonde asked, "Then why do you do it?" He responded somewhat sarcastically, "Well, it is only proper to show the future Hokage respect." Naruto took a breath and replied, "Never mind, I'm too tired to try right now. How is Haruko-san doing? She had my clone dispel a while ago when she left for the hospital." "Haruko-sama is still away and Hiyashi-sama is at a Konoha council meeting. Do you want to train with me?" Neji responded. "Not today. I want to hit the bed early since tomorrow is Hiyashi-sama told me he has something planned out for me," the brunette sighed. The boy laughed a little and said, "I take it you are not looking forward to it?" Naruto gave him a look, but he closed his eyes and grinned slightly in agreement. He then proceeded to the main house, which was located at the end of the compound's house complex, along with his room. Numerous branch members greeted him along the way with smiles and even bows. Additionally, he had to deal with some people who chose to ignore him and a couple who even flinched when they saw the boy, but they were greatly outnumbered by those who supported the blonde. A semi-flashback when Naruto failed to distinguish between members of the main house and those from the branch families. He gained the Hyuga's affection and respect. He would assist the household with any and all tasks they could find, from cooking to laundry, whenever he wasn't training, sleeping, eating, or getting some private stuff. He had made good use of the privacy seal, Tomb of Secrets, since it even prevented the Byakugan from looking in while he took a bath or a dump. The capacity to produce hundreds of clones was useful for this, and they were a boon to the cooks, gardeners, laundry workers, and others who, after a little instruction or simple supervision, grew fond of Naruto and even viewed him as a son or student. When most members of the shinobi branch returned from their missions, he taught them a little of the main house style and even assisted in healing them. When he asked Hiyashi if he was permitted to do this, the man smiled and said, "Since you are not a family member, you have the right to do as you please. Since I am a member of the main house, even if I wished I could, clan rules would forbid me to do so." With his eyes closed and his face pointed upward, Naruto grasped his meaning instantly. He learned the saying, "Look underneath," from the man there. Hiyashi was essentially requesting that the boy do that because, despite his desire, he was unable to do so due to clan regulations. This increased the branch family's affection for him, and when Naruto provided them with the translation of Hiyashi's words while they were under oaths of secrecy, the gap between the main and branch clans started to narrow, if only slightly, and the branch members started to respect Hiyashi for reasons other than fear. SFB and the civilian portion and the majority of the Shinobi Council occupied separate rooms during the council meeting for the last 10 minutes. Hiruzen had been massaging his temples. The forest fire was started because word had spread that Naruto was staying at the Hyuga compound. "Hyuga-sama, how could you take that monster in?" cried a white-haired civilian counselor. Another participant said, "Haruno-san is right, Hyuga-sama. That brat needs no home or even care for that matter. Instead, that's right. That trash should just burn," added another counselor, who was unable to contain it. Meanwhile, in order to maintain his composed demeanor, Hiyashi was counting backwards from 100 for the third time since his wife was still too sick to attend the meetings. He was grateful to Kami. Otherwise, there would have been a carnage as he attempted to hear what they had to say. He prayed that the Hokage would step in and silence them. The other voices died out when the mummy man Danzo said, "Indeed, Hiyashi-san, why did you take that boy in when you said that he would be hated in the clan compound?" He was grateful to Danzo for opening the alleged conversation. For once, naturally, the mummy had other motives. He had heard that Naruto was learning the Juken, but he was unable to obtain any additional information from Sarutobi, so he kept the boy and his skills a secret. Since the Byakugan could see through any of Naruto's genjutsu, he was unable to surreptitiously send any of his root members to spy on the blonde while he was inside or near the Hyuga compound. Hiyashi responded, "As you may have heard, Uzumaki-san saved my daughter from kidnap and possibly a life of forced breeding, and doing so he also saved my clan's honor and Konoha's exclusive dujutsu. As for the second part of your question, Shimura-san, it appears that it was a hasty decision as most of my clan seems to be on the boy's side." Hiyashi concluded his remarks with a mental smirk. This was unexpected by Danzo. He believed he could push Hiyashi into a corner and take the Kyuubi for himself, but since he was now without a hand, he chose to bluff. The Warhawk asked more than he said, but surely the boy doesn't feel that his place belongs there, and there are those who look down on him. True, but they are in minority, and if there was a problem with that, then Hokage-sama would have taken the boy as his stay was approved by Hokage-sama. Hiyashi checkmated Danzo with his answer and then continued. Besides, he is much safer in my clan's compound than practically anywhere else, both from the village and from other shinobi. Shibi Aburame responded, seemingly emotionless. That would be logical. He looked at Danzo through his glasses and added, "It is the best place to keep the boy from harm, as nobody can sneak into the compound." He was supported by Sume Inuzuka, who said, "I agree with Hiyashi and Shibi. My clan's members have not smelled any of his blood for the past year. It has been a little bit more quiet in the T&I department since people stopped going after Uzumaki-kun." Inoichi Yamanaka laughed. "And the boy deserves all the help he gets," said Shuza Akamichi, a kind giant. Shikaku Nara added, "Hiding in plain sight, good strategy," to the discussion. When Fugaku Uchiha said, "I don't think it is such a good idea," the other shinobi clans gave him stares. The Hokage made the decision to step in and ask, "And why is that, Fugaku?" "Because Hokage-sama, we all know what the boy contains, and if he manages to control it," at this Hiruzen gave a mental smirk, "he would upset the power balance of the clans." The head of Uchiha responded. However, it is well known that the boy aspires to become Hokage and defend the entire Konoha village. In addition, he was taken in by a clan that specializes in a taijutsu style that depends on a dujutsu that the boy could never learn. In addition to what you said, it seems that you believe Naruto will accomplish this. Sarutobi responded with yet another smirk in his head. The Hokage interrupted him before he could finish, saying, "If it seemed that way then I stand corrected, however that does not change the possibility he must not be allowed." Hiruzen growled at the Sharingan user, making Hiyashi mentally give a fist pump of victory while maintaining his icy demeanor. "If that does indeed happen, I would recommend that you start becoming something that he sees as an ally rather than demanding something that you surely know I will refuse, since it was the perfect answer to the meeting we had when the boy was born." The Hokage yelled, "That goes for the rest of you," to the others. After they all assumed positions of thought, Hiruzen finally adjourned the meeting. In the meantime, Naruto the blonde made the decision to head to the park in order to unwind. When he had free time, he loved to visit here with Haruko, Hinata, and Hiyashi, and loved watching the kids play with their parents. Otherwise, he felt a little envious of the children who had parents now that he was no longer an ingrate. Naruto was grateful to Kami and whatever star brought him into contact with the Hyugas, but tried to understand his perspective at the age of 6. He pondered what his life might have been like had his parents survived. He was training his chakra control skills with his Shinsogen on the way there to see how far he could see with the least amount of chakra. Then, over the lake close to the Uchiha compound, he noticed a sharp rise in temperature. Did you forget about this one? After running a short distance to the lake, he was able to observe a boy wearing a blue shirt and white pants with a duck but hairstyle from his elevated vantage point on the small hill a few feet from the body of water. Naruto snickered, trying not to laugh, screaming, "Kaden! Bukaku no Jutsu! Fire style! Great fireball!" And exhaling a stream of fire twice his size, the Uchiha was destroying some seals. In order to witness the chakra flow and observe the jutsu a second time, Naruto paused to activate Sojin Seishin. He saw that even though the boy mastered the manipulation, his exhaled air was not sufficiently mixed. To put it simply, he was attempting to perform the jutsu more quickly than he was able to obtain the chakra. The blonde walked to the duck, but after jumping to it he heard the boy ask, "Shikusho, damn it. Why isn't it working?" as he approached him closely enough. "You're being too hasty. Breathe in and let the chakra mix with the air for a little while before exhaling," replied Naruto. The Uchiha turned and looked inquisitively at the Kyuubi host. He arched an eyebrow and asked, "Who are you?" Naruto responded matter-of-factly, "Normally, it is polite to give your name first before asking for other people's names." His voice was a little sad as he said, "Sorry, I am Sasuke Uchiha." The blonde replied, "No problem. My name is Uzumaki Naruto." Sasuke inquired, "Your name is Fishcake?" He responded, "Actually it's Maelstrom," and displayed a tick mark above his eye. Sasuke asked with a cute tilted face, "What is that?" "A whirlpool of sorts, but more potent," Naruto grinned in response. The duck but became interested and asked, "Oh, and what are you doing here, Naruto-san?" With a finger to his chin, the blonde replied, "Well, I was just out for a walk and I saw you struggling to do that jutsu and thought you might need help." "What do you know about jutsu?" "You can't be any older than me," replied Sasuke. "Well, I know a couple of jutsu, but despite that I have been doing chakra control exercises for over a year now. Don't ask. Just hear me out. Let the chakra mix with the air for a little while before exhaling." Despite raising an eyebrow, Sasuke followed Naruto's instructions, creating hand seals and filling his lungs with air and chakra to resemble a pigeon during mating season. Then he exhaled, creating a house-sized fireball, and mentally shouted the name of the jutsu. After a few moments of being in awe, he turned to face Naruto, who returned his smile. Then, looking sideways and blushing slightly above his nose in shame, Sasuke extended his hand and said, "Thanks." At first, Naruto gave him a slightly intrigued look, but then he smiled slyly, took his arm, and shook it. Both Haruko and Hiyashi were home and spending some quality time with their two daughters when the blonde arrived back at the compound. Hinata was playing with Hanabi, a 2-year-old ball of energy, while they sat on the main house porch. Hanabi exclaimed, "Ni-chan, you're home," and began to sprint in Naruto's direction. He recalled that when Hanabi said her first words, he had to hide from Hiyashi for 2 days. Rewind. Naruto was practicing the Juken katas without his clones on a bright late afternoon since he had to watch Hanabi for the day while Hiyashi and Haruko were away on official clan business. He made the decision to ease up on his workout today. He stayed nearby in case something happened, but he left a clone to keep watch over her. The blonde was practicing his form when the clan head and his wife returned an hour later when they noticed another Naruto playing with the toddler. The married couple gave him, "You left my daughter alone," looks and was relieved. A grinning Hiyashi commanded, "Lower your hips a bit and relax your waist." The exact same thing that Naruto told Neji. The boy instantly halted and turned to face the beaming couple. He replied, "Thank you, Hiyashi-sensei." With a composed yet serious expression, Haruko looked at her husband, who blushed and jumped a little, and put a hand to her smiling mouth, saying, "Era. What's this?" "Oh my. Era, Hiyashi-sensei." After Naruto dispelled the clone, they all joined Hanabi. Hiyashi reached over and picked up the toddler from her playpen. When her father began to embrace her, she grinned and laughed. Naruto started to walk back after thinking about going back to his training after seeing this. When Hanabi noticed this, she became agitated and started gurgling some baby noises as she extended her arms in the direction of the blonde. Then Haruko began to stroke her daughter's hair, asking, "What is it, sweetheart? You don't want Naruto Ni-chan to leave?" With every step the boy took, Hanabi became more agitated until she was able to speak. Ni, boo, baby talk, now oh ni. Naruto turned around after he froze. The eyes of Hiyashi and Haruko were as big as saucers. Naruto approached the girl slowly and lifted her up while yelling, "Ni," and chuckles. He felt a chill go down his spine, and it took all his willpower not to cry happy tears. Then he turned to face Hiyashi, who was grinning, but there was a thunderstorm in the background. Hiyashi continued to smile and exclaimed, "Naruto-kun, I'm going to kill you." Just like with Hinata, he secretly hoped that he would be the subject of his daughter's first words, but Naruto crushed his hopes. The boy began to run as a result, but not before leaving a clone to soothe Hanabi. Given how much Hiyashi pursued Naruto before going home, it took Haruko 2 days to calm her husband down. Flashback end. Meanwhile, Hanabi was stumbling toward Naruto when she stumbled and fell to the ground, face down. The toddler burst out laughing as the blonde then sunshined and caught her just inches off the ground. When Naruto confronted the agent, he would have to sincerely thank the root member who had used the escape technique. Even so, Naruto practiced with 100 clones for 3 days before he was able to do it correctly. Keep in mind that Naruto still needs to practice his techniques in order to perform them. The Shinsogen is not the same as the eye-cheating Sharingan. Then Hiyashi gestured for the boy to come closer. The man asked calmly, but not icily, "How is your training going recently?" "It is the same as it has been for 3 weeks now, Hiyashi-sama. My chakra control is perfect. I have mastered all the forms and advanced moves of the Juken, including Kaden, Rotation, Kusho, Vacuum Palm, and Yuho Soshiken, Gentile Step, Twin Lion Fists, and the 3 Academy Jutsu besides the secret ones." Then he exhaled. If only I could stop the seal from leaking chakra constantly, then I could use them in battle, but right now it would just either be wasted chakra or it could damage my hands, the kid said. Hiyashi stood for a moment without saying, I see. The boy appeared dejected as the man said, well, I was planning on testing you tomorrow to see if I can declare you a Juken master, but seeing this I think it will have to wait. Hiyashi took note of this and went on, don't let it get to you. You are too young to be saddened by this. Take this as an opportunity to get some experience in life and prepare for the title of Grand Master. Only one with perfect form, perfect chakra control and at least 10 years of experience can claim the title. You may have the first 2 requirements down, but you can't rush the third, he said. The child looked up with a look of wonder. Who was to blame? Few people were aware of the Juken Grand Master title actually. That title could only be claimed by one person per generation, and Hiyashi was the current one. Naruto nodded as he looked up, his eyes gleaming with resolve. You seem eager to accept my title already, Hiyashi said with a laugh. Naruto nodded and wanted to resume playing with Hanabi and Hinata, but Hiyashi stopped him. Who knows, perhaps by that time your chakra would have stabilized, but until then I suggest you create your own form more suitable for your needs. If you need any help, come to me and I will do whatever I can, he continued. Naruto-kun, in 3 months Haruko and I will be going to the Hai no Kuni, Fire Country, capital to check on her health since the doctors here say that she is almost fully healed, so we want to check at the country's main hospital. Naruto replied to Hiyashi, that's great, glad to hear that Haruko-san, before turning to face his wife. Why thank you dear, but Hiyashi and I were wondering if you would like to join us with Hinata and Hanabi. We already talked to Hokage-sama and he agreed, Haruko grinned. Despite appearing somewhat taken aback by her remarks, Naruto nodded right away. Perfect! Exclaimed Haruko. Hiyashi started to say, well Naruto I would like to, but a branch member cut him off. He looked at the boy anxiously and said gravely, Hiyashi-sama, the family council would like to see you and Naruto-sama. Even though Hiyashi had a reputation for having a cool head, he couldn't help but think, not this shit again, and replied, I see, thank you Kaoru. His wife gave him a worried look. He nodded to reassure her before turning to face Naruto, who comprehended and followed. In the chambers of the council, Naruto followed Hiyashi into the room. The men and women of the council were seated Caesar style around a low round table, with 2 seats open between them, one of which was noticeably smaller than the other. Naruto took the other one, and Hiyashi went ahead and occupied the smaller one. A few moments later, the silence was broken by one elder. The old fart said, casting a spooky glance at Naruto, Hiyashi-sama, we have requested your presence here today because we consider that there have been grave violations of our family's traditions and regulations, all concerning the boy. Oh boy, here it comes, Hiyashi thought. Keeping his eyes closed, he finally opened his eyes and replied, I see, I suppose that you have analyzed the problems and have proof supporting these accusations. The other white-eyed geezers imitated the old fart's sneer as he said, we do. For the past time Uzumaki-kun spent here we have acknowledged the fact that you were to teach him the main house Juken style, but we did not approve of the fact that he may teach the style to the branch members of our clan. I see, Hiyashi replied once more, giving Naruto a comforting look. The boy didn't need to mind you training under Hiyashi with Hinata. The love he received from Haruko and Hanabi, and his own personality all contributed to the boy's unwaveringly determined expression. Curious to learn more about the council's opinions, he asked, then what do you propose? They practically laughed as they said, we propose that Uzumaki-kun be branded with the seal to keep this from happening. Which caused Naruto to squint his eyes like a, try it asshole, glare. Then Hiyashi cocked his head back slightly and said, I see, for the 3rd time since the council began. Then he glanced to his left, then his right, and went on. The geezers began to sneer and said, then I have no choice. Before denying your requests, the council turned pale as a result. But Hiyashi-sama, an elderly jerk, attempted to object. Naruto-kun has done nothing wrong. I know the family rules by heart, and there were no rules about teaching non-clan members the head family Juken style, nor did it stipulate that they cannot be taught by one. I find your accusations baseless, and so I dismiss them and forward an apology to Naruto-kun. He responded with a gasp. Once more, they had been checkmated. The boy looked stoic as he declared, I accept the apology Hiyashi-sama and bear no ill thought to the council. If there are no more concerns, then I would call this meeting adjourned, Hiyashi said after nodding. Another counselor exclaimed, there is one more matter Hiyashi-sama. Hiyashi looked over at the elderly prune. We have to talk about what age will Hanabi be branded to the branch house, he said. Hiyashi was momentarily distracted by his thoughts, but he was brought back to the present when he sensed a huge murderous intent that was making it difficult for even the Hyuga head to breathe. The entire council looked to the monstrous key's origin. Even though Naruto was grinning, he was leaking enough rage that a fly that had infiltrated the room died the moment it got within a foot of the blonde. Then, with his eyes closed, Naruto spoke, saying, "Honored council, I apologize for interrupting the session so rudely, but I have to tell you something you should know." Naruto opened his eyes to reveal a burning red with slit pupils and a portion of Kurama's ki released alongside his own behind the boy. A demonic fox eye and half a face appeared. Think Valley of the End after Sasuke Chidori ed Naruto in the chest. Touch even one hair on Hinata-chan or Hanabi-chan's head and there will be hell to pay. The council jumped and yelled, "Kyuubi!" in unison as they saw Naruto's eyes and felt the blonde's energy. The boy grinned at this. One member shouted, "Who do you think you are, demon?" Another yelled, "We should kill you for your insolence right now." Another prune exclaimed, "This is our family's law and we will follow it." That's right. Three more said. Only Aoi was remaining calm. By this point he eventually realized that Naruto was like a grandson to him, and he didn't like the meeting until the ki was let loose. Even though every bone in his old body was telling him to flee, he was now trying his hardest to listen. Hiyashi stated in an unpersuasive manner, "Naruto-kun, please stay out of this. This is a family matter." Naruto realized right away that he was essentially pleading with the boy to go on. Then Naruto bowed and dropped the ki. He spoke solemnly, but as he raised his head, he smiled. "I am deeply sorry for my outburst, Hiyashi-sama. I will stay out of family matters," he said. He went on to say, "But as a citizen of Konoha I cannot stay out of legal affairs," which further alarmed the council. The boy, holding a recording tag he saw a root member create while observing him with his Ranpu techniques, declared, "The honored members of the Hyuga Council are hereby accused of breaking Sandaime-sama's law concerning the Kyuubi no Yoko, which only I, Hokage-sama, and people we permit are allowed to talk about." Hiyashi's eyes widened in surprise, but he gave a mental smirk. The hint was taken by the Hyuga head, "But Naruto-kun, that law is punishable by death. Should the law be acted upon, it would not only spell the death of all council members except Aoi, but it would also bring great shame upon our name." He continued to act worried. "Indeed, Hiyashi-sama, but the honored council has so vehemently declared that they must follow every law there is, family or otherwise. I am just following their example." He continued with a matter-of-fact tone. At the sight of the old farts, the boy exclaimed, "Now if the council showed me otherwise, I would reconsider my actions." They appeared to have lost a few years of their already brief remaining life, and they were as white as paper. Then one of them calmed down and snarled at the blonde. "Are you threatening us to, Uzumaki-san?" The boy had a sly smile that would have pleased the elderly Kurama. An answer was not required. They were aware that he had them by the balls. "Very well, we will give you an example by not touching Hinata or Hanabi with any sealing intention," said one of them. "Not good enough," asserted Naruto. Another counselor started to say, "Wah," but the boy cut him off. Then Naruto slammed his hand on the floor and a confidentiality seal, Tomb of Secrets, appeared, adhering to the various surfaces of the room. "I will be frank," he said. Seals seemed simple to him, even though he only knew 3, and he practiced it on so many clones that he could now do it without them. "The sealing will stop now, one way or another." One of the female members snarled at the boy, saying, "How dare you? You have no right to call for such a thing." They were terrified because Hiyashi had warned them that if the host died, the Kyuubi would eventually reappear exactly where the host had been killed. They were also unable to touch him because, in addition to Hiyashi's protection, he was already a Juken master in all but name. If Sandaime-san's law is implemented, it will mean the end of the council, and you are all aware that Hiyashi-sama and Haruko-san oppose branding and only agreed to do so to maintain harmony within the main family. Therefore, as I mentioned, in one way or another, here, you may keep the events that happened here secret, but this tag goes straight to the Hokage. If I see one more seal on another forehead that wasn't there before, or if I hear that it was used once more," he grinned, releasing a sheer force that made the elderly prunes feel as though they were in the path of a Force 7 hurricane. The majority of contemporary scales reach 5. The council was terrified when Naruto removed the confidentiality seal and left the room. Hiyashi was laughing uncontrollably on the inside, but his eyes were wide with surprise at the turn of events. Later that evening, Hiyashi gave Haruko a detailed account of what had transpired. Her voice was worried as she asked, Era, did Naruto-kun do all that? Won't he be in danger now?" "Not really, I will keep those old has-beens off his back," Hiyashi reassured her. Laughing a little, he made an effort to keep her away from stress even though she was now nearly healthy. "But won't he be in danger if the council sends someone for him?" she inquired. Well, most clan members are willing to die for him already since they see him as part of their families, and I will keep an eye on those who don't. And they won't try to do anything to him inside the compound since they know about Kurama's revival, and I don't think they want to deal with a pissed off Biju on clan grounds. Actually, I think that last part will make them protect the boy. Hiyashi laughed once more and was mimicked by his spouse. She cuddled up to her husband, who gave her an embrace, and said, "Yes, you are right, Naruto is safe and sound while he stays close to the compound, and outside he is either watched by Anbu or can take care of himself with his father's jutsu as well as his own. Really, that boy turned my life upside down, but all for the better. He has the guts to do what I always wished for and more. I swear I would adopt him if I could, but I must still follow some rules." Haruko started to laugh when Hiyashi used the word "some," but then a 1000-watt light bulb appeared over her head. "You know, honey, there is another way for the boy to join the family," she chuckled. Hiyashi silently gazed at her while making an inquisitive face. "We have a daughter his age and we have to find her a husband, that is if she does not choose one herself," Haruko continued with a grin. Hiyashi took a few seconds to realize what had happened, and although he was renowned for his composure and cool head, his response was understandable given that he was still a father first and foremost. With his back to the bed, he immediately got out of bed in an anime fashion and stood up. No, I will not have my baby leave me. The moment she brings a boy, even Naruto-kun, I will," he said while performing a rain dance. Haruko said, "Honey," in a sweet, serene voice that sounded more solemn. Hiyashi turned slowly and froze in place, turning blue at the sight of his wife. Haruko was grinning and appeared charming, but there was a negative, demonic figure with red eyes and a black background behind her. Imagine what you want, but for me, I see a woman with Haruko's build, but with clawed hands and hair that is everywhere." As the claws approached Hiyashi's neck, the figure behind her opened her mouth in a fanged smile and grew larger, asking again in a deceptively sweet tone, "You will do what, honey?" With a cold sweat, Hiyashi replied, I will stand aside and be happy for my baby." The background turned to flowers as the figure withdrew. "I knew it, dear." Haruko grinned once more as the figure glanced over her shoulder. A month had passed since Naruto had appeared before the council and altered the course of any Hyuga clan member's future with a paperslip in his hands. He was now making his way to the shinobi library with Hizashi and 2 other members of the branch family. The majority of the villagers were still giving him icy, hard glares, and he could feel them. Naturally, it helped that Byakugan-enhanced eyes returned those glares since they felt like Juken spanking everyone who dared even think negatively about their hero. The Hyuga guards surrounding the boy lived up to their reputation as emotional control experts. Indeed, hero. Word spread about who was to blame for this, and the forehead seal was no longer used well. It would be easy for anyone with half a brain to figure out to the boy's chagrin. The branch members were now essentially worshipping the ground on which he had walked. He didn't want his deeds to be praised or even worshipped. His adoptive family was the object of his affection, and he only needed to know that they were secure and content. He became grateful for what little he had after living for almost 5.5 years with no one to take care of him. Of course, that didn't mean he didn't have lofty goals, but he also realized that nothing worthwhile came without effort and sacrifice. He enjoyed being able to walk the streets without worrying about getting mauled at every turn, but he didn't allow the worship to control him. He only needed to bluff the council. True enough, I bluffed. Rewind, 2 days following the Hyuga Council. As 2Kage Bunshin signed and organized the documents, Hiruzen sat in his office chair and gazed out the window. Since Naruto revealed this technique, he has been able to savor the small pleasures in life, such as sipping his coffee, reading his Icha book, and watching the sunset, much to the chagrin of his female Anbu guards. While laughing like a perverted schoolgirl, however, he was too preoccupied with his thoughts today to think of anything along those lines. He was startled out of his reverie by the sound of a knock on his door. "Come in." The cage said. The doors slowly opened, allowing a man and a small child to enter with grace. The man said, "You summoned us, Lord Hokage?" "Yes, Hiyashi, please have a seat." The man grinned, gesturing toward the couch. Hiyashi obeyed, and the preteen soon followed. The old man stopped and turned to face the now smirking Hyuga head. "Hiyashi, I heard some wonderful news coming from one of your clansmen and I called you here to confirm or negate them." Sarutobi's expression was solemn, but he smiled occasionally. "Is it true that your family council finally gave you full power concerning the sealing process of your clan's branch members as you desired for a long time?" he asked. Hiyashi said, "No, I'm afraid not, Hokage-sama," which caused the elderly man to frown pitifully. Then Hiyashi grinned once more and went on. "The council lost nearly all its political power, the sealing included." Hiruzen almost had a heart attack from this. The cage prayed that Hiyashi would listen to him because he might need it for his village council. Really? How did you accomplish that? Hiyashi, you have to tell me, he said. The cryptic response from Hiyashi, I didn't do anything, Lord Hokage, caused Sarutobi to frown to the old man's dismay. It appeared that the Hyuga wanted this to remain a secret. Seeing the cage's reaction, Hiyashi smiled evilly in his mind and went on. He replied in a whisper, to be honest, all the credit goes to this little bottomless pit of surprises and eating. Hiruzen perspired because he had never imagined that the powerful Hyuga counselors would submit to a child's labors. However, the old man recalled who this was and that one should always expect the unexpected when it comes from a boy. Really? He repeated. The cage asked the big-eyed boy, Naruto, how did you manage to make it happen? Well, I'm not supposed to tell, the boy exclaimed, looking sheepishly at the corner shadows. Hiruzen waved his hand. Understanding, two puffs appeared from the aforementioned corners as soon as he finished. In order to make sure there were no connections to the outside world, the boy turned on his shinsogen and scanned the room for a few seconds. After that, he extinguished the jutsu and inhaled deeply. As the boy looked around, Sarutobi waited anxiously. He was aware of the jutsu, and to be honest, he wanted the bugs in his office checked. After finishing and taking a breath, Naruto thought the boy would begin speaking, but instead he was taken aback when seal arms covered the doors and walls and shot from the boy's feet. Since this jutsu required more than 20 hand seals, the cage was astonished that he accomplished it without using a seal. He recognized the seal as the one he showed the boy against his will. Blinking, the Hokage asked, Naruto, how did you do that? The boy chirped, I saw it from you, Hokage GG. Hiruzen repeated, no, I mean how did you do it without hand seals? The boy asked, what are those? And both men fell to the ground in disapproval. Hiruzen then showed the boy tiger, ox, ram, and the cage bunshin seal, explaining that hand seals are those positions of the hands to make jutsu, like these. What? They make jutsu work? I thought that they were cool poses. I never did them seriously. I don't even use it for the cage bunshin anymore. I just make my chakra move like I see it in the people that do jutsu, though it usually takes me about a week in general before I can use them properly using shadow clone. The men scowled as they considered what the boy had said. Kami, I don't even want to consider this child's talent if he performs jutsu without hand seals like that. No, Naruto. They make jutsu work more easily, but every shinobi wants to do jutsu seal less and most do with years of practice. The instructor responded. So it's better to make them seal less? The blonde inquired. He smiled as both men nodded. Hey, return here in a month for you to use the shinobi library. I will have a permit. The Hokage said to Naruto, I would give it to you now, but the council would eat me alive. He then turned to face Hiyashi, who nodded. All right, Hokage JJII. Because his baby teeth are still being replaced, the boy's smile was half toothy. All right, now tell me how you persuaded the council of Hyuga, the elderly man inquired. The boy turned to the Hokage and told him the entire story after turning to face Hiyashi, who nodded and smiled. Hiruzen thought for a moment after hearing the story, but then he realized that Naruto was safer than ever, and he burst out laughing, which made Hiyashi and the blonde smile. It's unbelievable what you did. You really took them for a ride, the elderly man said. Yeah, their level of fear was unbelievable. I mean, Kurama ni-san trained me to fight ki, and they nearly fainted when I didn't even give them a tiny bit of his. The men froze in their spots when he said, you should see their face when I showed them a recording tag that doesn't work. He laughed. You mean that it doesn't work? With concern, Hiyashi asked. Naruto removed the tag and handed it to Hiruzen, who then burst out laughing after looking at it. Hokage-sama, what is it? Hiyashi was growing agitated. When the Hyuga man looked at the slip, Hiruzen put his hand to his forehead and stopped laughing. You understand, Hiyashi? That tag is a little better than a baby's scribbles when drawing, the Hokage grinned, adding that it still served as an effective intimidation tool. That makes me think of you. Naruto, where did you get the idea to create that tag and use it like that? Oh, the kanji, ne, root, on a ninja's hite 8, forehead protector, is the tag I learned. I asked a branch member what this tag was after he attempted to attach it to me while I was holding my shinsogen. He went on to explain that it's a recording seal that can identify the topics you previously discussed and demonstrated its operation for me. Where did you get it? He asked. When I told him, he became very irate, burned the first one, and warned me not to associate with ninjas that had the letter ne. I then attempted to create my own using what I could recall, but it didn't seem to work out for me. Sarutobi and Hiyashi clenched their fists in horror and said, that branch member was correct, Naruto. Avoid them at all costs. They serve a very evil man as shinobi. I told the boy, Hiyashi said. All right. The boy replied despite his curiosity. He chose not to inquire after noticing the men's irate expressions. The Hokage said to the boy, you still didn't tell me where you learned to intimidate people like that. Oh, that I learned by watching the scary Oji-san, uncle, old man, and Oni-chan, sister, who live in the basement of the big building that looks like a hospital that had a sign on the wall that says, Konoha's Intelligence Division, said the child. The men prayed that the people Naruto watched were just ordinary paper pushers with a bit too much talent, and they felt their hearts beat the fuck out of them and rush out of their chests. Can you explain the two, Naruto? Sarutobi inquired. Yes. Oji-san has 2 facial scars and a headband that covers his entire head, giving him a terrifying appearance. The boy looked up and put a finger on his chin. Oh no. Both men thought, Oni-san is very attractive and has purple hair, but she dresses like the girls in Hokage Gigi's book. She also has a white snake that is both frightening and charming. Naruto grinned as he concluded. Oh boy. The adults sighed in their minds then, grabbing the buzzer, the Hokage said to the secretary, send for Anko Midarashi and Ibiki Morino. Yes, sir. Buzzed back from the interphone. The boy reacted instantly when the torture and interrogation experts arrived 10 minutes later. It's them. Oni-san and the frightful Oji-san. Naruto gestured startledly. Then Anko started laughing, saying, Biwuhahaha, Oji-san? Anko laughed for 5 more seconds before a light switch clicked in her brain. She pointed to Ibiki, whose right eyebrow was now twitching at the woman and the blonde. Have we met up somewhere, Gaki? She said with a broad smile that made the men shudder, but the boy appeared unfazed and continued to smile broadly. Hokage Gigi, that's her, really, Habi-chan, which is a snake with a cute suffix, is with you, Oni-san? The woman looked dumbfounded as he asked. What is Habi-chan? She asked, maintaining the same expression. White Habi-chan that occasionally follows you around when you frighten the traders in the hospital like building's basement. He uttered those words. You're referring to Miki-chan and… Wait a minute, how were you made aware of Miki-chan? The men were no different, so she asked, looking even more perplexed. Well, when I'm not frightening the traders who cause you trouble, I like to play with her. Could I visit Miki-chan? Please, 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 please. All right. Stop bugging me. Kuchios no jutsu. She cried, biting her thumb. A white cobra with sapphire blue eyes, as large as Anko and thick as an arm, emerged from a summoning circle, hissed, and scanned the room for Naruto, looking around with an equal amount of surprise. Miki-chan. Naruto began jogging toward the snake while chirping. The Hokage was about to leap to Naruto's defense when the snake took on a cunning expression and ran toward him, but it was too late. The snake collided and coiled around the boy, causing him to fall twice. When they got back, they discovered a laughing Naruto and a snake that was grinning and rubbing the top of its head against the boy's right cheek with a disdainful expression. Hey, get rid of Miki-chan. It's tickling. The boy was having a hard time getting rid of the snake. With a crow singing in the background, the adults in the room were wiping their jaws on the floor, and Ibiki quickly gathered himself before turning to Anko. Hey, Anko. Am I seeing this right? Are you trained to scare interrogation victims, Miki-chan? Inmates playing and cuddling with a young child? He said, his face starting to perspire a little. Anko simply nodded before approaching the joyful pair and separating them before asking, staring into Naruto's eyes. All right, talk, Gaki. When did you and my snake become friends? Her expression was frightening but not menacing as she asked. Naruto kept grinning and said, well, 3 weeks ago, I sneaked into the hospital-like building and met Miki-chan. When I found her scarring a man tied to a chair, he had attacked me on my birthday. When I tripped over her tail, she discovered me and bit me at that moment. Miki-chan attacked the shinobi, and the ninja on the chair stood up. Miki-chan was still feeling lightheaded when the ninja grabbed her and threw her against a desk, causing the sharp objects on it to fall in her direction after saving her by jumping. I knocked him out once more. With a toothy smile and a sigh, the boy concluded. I met her a few more times and we became friends. Then, with beady eyes, Anko said, Gaki, let me understand. You repeatedly prevented a breakout attempt, got bitten by one of my most deadly snakes, and not only survived but also made friends after sneaking into the torture and interrogation department. Possibly the safest spot in Konoha. Yes, if that's the name of the basement, Naruto chirped. When Ibiki's turn came to pose the questions, he walked up until he shadowed the boy, took hold of the back of his orange silk robe, and lifted him into the air, looking directly into the blonde's eyes before he began to talk. Or rather, shout. Which was louder than talking but not quite shouting. "Gaki, please tell me immediately how you entered my basement." Before the boy could answer, the snake opened its hood and got up between the two, looking directly at Ibiki's face with very angry eyes, an open mouth, and hissed. From 4 inches away, please. The man closed his eyes, grinned, and perspired a little. Mickey then stepped back into a coiling position and gazed at the two. With his trademark foxy grin, Naruto said, "Like this." The boy's outline began to glow a faint white, and then he gradually turned transparent until he was no longer visible. Hiruzen got up from his chair and started looking for the boy. Hiyashi activated his Byakugan, and like the other adults, Mickey was taken aback and started looking for her friend, but they were unable to locate him, even trying to find his chakra signature. "Naruto?" The elderly Kage yelled. The man got his response after a few seconds. Here, high up on the ceiling, standing upside down, Naruto gradually returns to normal view. And Naruto mastered the climbing exercise. "I discovered this small trick while practicing Kaden by mistake. I used my usual chakra instead of the Ranpu one. Tenketsu. It functions by removing the unique chakra from my skin." He chirped. "I call it Kagami-iki, mirror breath." "What? How? Who?" Even with my Byakugan, I was unable to locate him, Hiyashi stumbled. Even Mickey-chan, who can sense heat, was unable to locate him. Anko kept pointing to the snake, which was relieved to see her friend safe. Search for snake facial pits. He had lost even his chakra signature, Ibiki continued. "Well, for the first 2 parts, keep in mind that my Ranpu chakra controls all forms of light, even infrared, X-ray, and chakra." Naruto added his thoughts. "As for the other one, you learn some tricks when you spend the majority of your life escaping from irate mobs led by shinobi," he said, causing Hiruzen and Hiyashi to grimace after jumping down from there. He responded matter-of-factly, "In my fanfic, chakra energy is not the same as chakra radiation." The Hokage then remarked, "Naruto, that is a really clever trick, but a child has no place in that basement." "Why?" The child appeared perplexed. The next person to speak was Anko. "What do ya mean? Why, you heard the screams there, didn't you?" she asked in a bewildered manner. "Yes, I did, and initially it was frightening, but then I overheard some Anbu discussing how the screamers were enemies and traitors who deserved it. I also believed they were correct because I saw Hokage Jii-san enter the room a few times and the cries continued." Naruto replied, "Thank you for all those language lessons with Haruko. Also, keep in mind that's where the guy who tried to kill me is, so that added to the equation." "However, didn't you find what the inmates were subjected to unsettling, Naruto-kun?" a worried Hiyashi asked. "I was a little sorry for them. Of course, Oji-san and Oni-chan here were not that mean to them, so either those guys were very sensitive or were just cowards," the boy said. Turning from the floor to the 2 T&I specialists, he nodded and put his arms together as he spoke. Together with a checkmark, this gave Anko a "Are you serious?" expression. "What did you mean by, not that mean, Gaki? I almost severed a man's pinky finger last week before he revealed to me where he had hidden those documents." Anko. Hiruzen screamed because she didn't want to teach the boy about the amazing art of torture. "Really? That must have hurt." Anko grinned when Naruto said, looking away, a little disturbed. Hiyashi interrupted, saying, "Look, Naruto-kun. There is absolutely no place for a child to be. Although it is admirable that you recognize that what occurs there is for the benefit of the village, it is not beneficial for you to participate in it." Then Naruto replied, "Very important, there. I've experienced more than most. Oni-san needs to keep the majority of them alive, after all." Before Sarutobi gave the 2 special Junin an explanation of the boy's circumstances and life prior to his admission to the Hyuga compound, they were taken aback. Each adult was affected differently by the story. Mickey was standing in attack position, hissing loudly, and Anko was a little angry but more perplexed. Ibiki gazed admiringly at the brat, but that didn't mean he wasn't angry. "Why did he do this to you, Gaki?" she inquired. "Well, at first I thought that it was because my parents were some sort of traitors or that I actually did something wrong, but later I found out the real reason," Naruto said. Turning to face the woman after the Hokage nodded, he smiled and said, "Let me give you a hint. He is red, furry, as large as the Hokage mountain, and sealed inside me." "It's okay, he knows," said Hiruzen, who nodded as both T&I specialists turned to face him. "The Kyuubi," Ibiki replied, getting the boy to nod. After all, it was the same thing that happened to her because of her traitor sensei Orochimaru, and she generated so much ki that it nearly rivaled Kurama's, and the fox had centuries to build it up. To say that Anko was furious by now would be an understatement of the millennium. However, just as it began, Anko pulled it back, then dropped on one knee and placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder before grinning and telling the boy. I mean Naruto-kun. Please come tell your Oni-chan if someone even gives you the wrong look. Deceitfully sweet, she said. Naruto nodded angrily, seeing right through Anko's lovely mask. This kid is a natural at infiltration. Ibiki thought in the meantime. Gaki, I have to give you credit for staying up through that. A civilian adult could have died from shock from the pain alone. Well, I've experienced worse things than that. I suppose I grew accustomed to it, Naruto responded simply, as if it were commonplace. The two special Junin were intrigued by this, but they chose not to inquire after noticing the Hokage waving at them. The boy backed away, looking somewhat scarred, as Hiyashi said, Naruto-kun, it's getting late so we have to get back since I'm sure that Hinata and Hanabi will throw a tantrum if we delay any further. He knew from experience that if Hanabi got upset, hell would break loose. The last time that happened was when she had to take a standard vaccine for children, and it took Naruto and Haruko 2 days to mend the relationship between father and daughter because Hiyashi took her to the doctor. All right. The boy replied, then lifted the privacy seal, and Miki coiled herself around him as though to bid him farewell just as he was ready to leave the room. As Anko looked at the two, a thought came to him. Why don't you hold Miki-chan for a short time, Naruto-kun? She got a little bored because I've been so busy lately, so I think she'll be content. The boy turned back to the woman after glancing at Miki, who nodded and hissed joyfully. Oni-chan, that would be fantastic, but wouldn't she frighten the other residents of the compound? She is a rather large snake, after all. Oh, I don't think that it would be a problem. Anko grinned and looked at Miki, giving her a mental command. After realizing her meaning, the snake shrank until she was roughly the size of a shoelace. Nice. The boy who gently lifted her in his hand thought. When Anko noticed Hiyashi's anxious expression, he said, just so you know, she is a summoned snake and much smarter than ordinary animals. She is aware of who can be trusted. But you can also let her know that someone is a friend and let her smell them. She won't attack them unless you give her instructions. She gave Naruto and Hiyashi each a vial of the counter poison. But just in case, here is the antidote. Oh, and if you need more, come and find me, with a sly smile, she said. Hiyashi became more at ease and agreed to accept the snake and the offer as a result. Then they both walked out of the office. Flashback ends. When Naruto regained consciousness, he realized that he was almost at his destination and began to look around, learning the route so he could return later. After noticing a shinobi store to his left and an odd-looking scroll in the window of the shop, he decided to take a closer look at it because he found it unusually intriguing and alluring. Naruto-sama, are you interested in that storage scroll? The boy nodded in agreement when branch member 1 asked. A storage scroll? What is it? The boy became interested. After telling him to wait there, the Hyuga guard grinned, went inside the store, and a few minutes later came out holding a copy of the one in the window, then knelt down and told the boy. These function similarly to your armbands, but they can hold more. Both create a big pocket, if you will. Using Fuinjutsu, you remember how Hiyashi-sama demonstrated the operation of the band's seals. He gave the blonde another nod as he clarified. What is Fuinjutsu, Anyo? Naruto asked, drawing a deadpan expression from Hizashi. Not that the boy noticed. I heard Hokage Jii-san use that word a couple of times. The branch head thought, you use a 25 seal Fuin, Tomb of Secrets, seal less, a rank, and you don't even know what Fuins are. Well, Naruto-sama, Fuinjutsu is a shinobi art like ninjutsu and genjutsu, said branch member number 2, because it requires time and effort to learn. It is the most challenging to use actually. There is now only one seal master, Fuin, in Konoha. He is the Yondaime Hokage's sensei, Jiraiya-sama, he declared proudly. What is it used for? As the boy learned more about his father, his curiosity grew even more. Hizashi took over and said, well, if you know the seal formula and know how to use it, it can do anything you want. You must study a lot of seal theory and practice in order to learn a seal formula or develop your own. You get it? Yes. What exactly is a seal formula, though? Then, when member 1 opened the scroll, a peculiar design, like a star with a circle in the center, was visible. Do you see the marks on the scroll? He then hands the scroll to the boy so he can examine it more closely. You can keep that scroll. This is the seal formula. The Hyuga grinned and said, it is reusable and has a preservation addition to keep things from going bad. I'm grateful. The boy replied. After that, they continued walking until they reached the library, which to an adult would have appeared to be a typical public building, but to the boy, it resembled a castle or a prison, and he was a little scared to go inside because he knew that everywhere else, people would throw him out the moment he entered and call him derogatory names. After a few seconds, he felt a hand on his shoulder, turned to face the location, traced the arm that was attached to his body, and found Hizashi's comforting face nodding at him. He released a breath he didn't realize he was holding and walked toward the large wooden gates, turning the door knob while a knot was slowly creeping up his throat. He then reached for his inner pocket, which was near his heart, and felt the contents to regain his composure. He entered the building's main section slowly, and the first thing he saw was the enormous wooden desk with a small personal computer. Think computers from the 1980s. And a few official documents and paperwork piled on top of it. This desk was not even close to the Hokage's desk. Learning the shadow clones and his Sojin Seishin helped him learn everything there practically by heart, but the air was so much thicker than he was used to. He instantly recognized the smell of old and new books in the dry conditioned air, which was similar to the Hyuga library where he used to go when looking for techniques or when Haruko sent him to bring either books or scrolls for his social and compulsory education like math and sciences. When Naruto looked at the 4-story bookshelves arranged in rows that resembled grocery store aisles, he realized why the main corridor was sufficiently wide for 10 people to walk side by side, or in this case, for long tables with 7 chairs each to be arranged so that there were only 2 people on each side. There were very few windows because sunlight could damage books or scrolls, so the area was primarily lit by neon lights with barely perceptible seal rays acting as filters. What can I say? These people were serious about their knowledge. The path was designed so that all parties entering or leaving would have to pass the check desk. Sorry, don't know how it's called in English. As the blonde approached, he noticed a woman in her early 30s wearing a simple black and blue kimono with a white sash, her hair tied in a top bun, and glasses. Hizashi gestured for the boy to continue moving, bringing him out of his tourist-like state, and the boy obeyed the man, who was closely followed by the 2 members of the Hyuga branch. Hizashi gave the man a bow and a smile as he passed her, and he nodded slightly in response before moving on, making subtle gestures to Naruto. All hell broke loose when the woman noticed this and turned her curious gaze in the direction of the motion. She snapped and snarled the moment she saw Naruto. "You trash! What the devil are you doing here? Before I throw you out, get out!" She yelled at the boy, disregarding the library's most revered volume rule, and signaled the Hyuga guards to approach the burning librarian. Byakugan. One guard seized her shoulder and hand, twisting it uncomfortably to her back in a lock, while the other extended his right hand at her neck, mimicking a knife or sword, intent on killing her, and releasing his ki. "You'll take back what you said and express regret to Naruto-sama." The Hyuga gave an extremely irate order. "Don't worry, Mamoru-san and Isamu-san," Naruto yelled. In an attempt to object, Isamu said, "But Naruto-sama, she." "Please, it's okay," I said. The boy went back to work. Both attacking Hyuga gave the woman a fierce look before letting her go and returning to the blonde's side, but much closer this time. The woman who had just witnessed her life flash before her eyes calmed down enough to breathe again. He leaned over the desk. "Hizashi, in case you were wondering, we're here on official business, serving as the boy's escort per Hokage-sama's directive. Just so you know, even if it wasn't a mission, the majority of the Hyuga branch members and even some of the head family would risk their lives to protect the boy." The woman's eyes widened in fear and curiosity as the man whispered the final line, to which she nodded simply and slowly in response. "Come on over, Naruto-kun, and hand her that Hokage-sama paper." "Hello." I whispered loud enough to be heard, but not loud enough to break the rules. Haruko gave the boy a course on library behavior, which he absorbed like a sponge. The blonde then took the official note out of one of his sleeve pockets. Per the Sandaime Hokage's directive, all theoretical and instructional materials, as well as the jutsu library below C rank, should be freely accessible to Uzumaki Naruto. 2 weeks of severe torture is the penalty for this low B-class secret. Sarutobi Hiruzen. The woman could not believe that a child who was not even an academy student was allowed in the shinobi section of the library, even if it was only D and E rank jutsu. She read the note again and again, checking the seal for authenticity, and was shocked to see a large bouquet of yellow roses. According to information I found on Wikipedia, yellow roses can mean friendship and apology among others. Where the boy's head was. "Well, ma'am, these are for you. Since I enjoy reading, I knew I would be visiting frequently, so I wanted to thank you and apologize for any inconvenience." With a tiny, nearly radiant smile, Naruto said. The librarian then looked at Naruto with a look that made Isamu and Mamoru on guard, expecting her to throw the flowers back at the blonde. But what happened next shocked everyone around her. She lifted her hand to cover her eyes as a couple of tears trickled down her cheeks, meeting on her chin before dripping down. To say that the woman was surprised would be equivalent to saying that Jiraiya unintentionally peeps on women. "Are you all right, ma'am? Did I annoy you?" Concerned for the woman, the boy asked. After wiping away her tears, the woman took off her arm so the boy could study her face and see two things: regret and sadness. "You didn't do anything wrong, Uzumaki-san. You never did, and I foolishly followed the village's voice and called you derogatory names because I thought you were a monster. It's my responsibility to apologize. I apologize." She bowed to the boy as she spoke. "I understand that a lot, so don't worry." That night, Q truly frightened and hurt people. When the two-branch Hyuga lunged at the woman, everyone in the library fled, but the boy felt he could trust her, even though he knew he shouldn't discuss Kurama in public like that. "What? How did you?" Terrified by the turn of events and the boy's reference to the fox, she inquired. "You're asking how I found out about Kyuubi no Yoko?" the boy inquired for clarification. The librarian gave a reciprocal nod. "Well, a while back, I sort of met him. Kurama is his name, and he's a really good man. I refer to him as Ni-san. He was under a strong genjutsu that night when he attacked, which sent him into a tailspin. I apologize for not going into specifics, but I must admit that he was the one who thought of the flowers. A class, by the way. This is meant to be a secret. The Hokage and I are the only ones permitted to discuss this, and call me Naruto, please." He finished his statement with a smile. The poor woman had a lot to process, but she recovered surprisingly quickly because she was accustomed to a lot of knowledge and information. She then asked a really insightful question. However, when the Kyuubi attacked, it had a feeling of pure malice, which is impossible to create with genjutsu. "Anyo, what does malice mean?" the boy asked, looking apprehensive and trapped, fidgeting and putting a hand to his chin, adopting a thinking pose, before giving up and turning to face the woman with a hint of remorse. "The adults gave me face faults for smiling," she replied with a smile and a tiny drop of perspiration. "It means the desire to inflict injury, harm, or suffering on another." "Oh, human folly was the cause of that." With a hint of rage on his face, the boy replied, "He and his 8 other brothers simply wanted to live their lives in peace, but they have been hunted down and imprisoned inside one person after another for centuries. Since the majority of Jinchuriki lack control over their seal projection and wind up in a place like a sewer or a dreary, dark place that would drive you insane, I believe that would make anyone want to kill everyone. Matter of fact," he said. The woman's eyes widened at the boy's response. It made a lot of sense. And then an hour later, after a few slaps and a glass of water poured over her face, she woke up, showed the boy the appropriate parts of the library, and introduced herself as Chizuru. She wasn't like the ignorant rabble who didn't see reason, though. Instead, years of living in a knowledge vault had opened her mind to the unknown. Naruto felt like he was a kid in a candy store with almost unlimited coupons. He created a couple of shadow clones in a hidden place and had them go invisible using Kagami-iki. In 10 minutes he had the layout of the library memorized. He started going through many bookshelves, finding what he wanted. He found 5 thick books on chakra theory and nature, 152 books using Kage Bunshin on education from preschool to doctorate level, including math, literature, social studies, history, biology, physics, chemistry, electronic and computer sciences, logic, psychology, a lot of novels and instructor books on finer arts like music and painting. He also got 2 books on jutsu creation, a couple of lesser forms of taijutsu scrolls, basic medical jutsu scrolls, and all fuinjutsu books and scrolls he could find that he had access to. He thought about genjutsu but decided against taking information for them since he knew that his chakra wouldn't let him do any normal genjutsu. Even his normal bunshin had similar makeup as the Kage Bunshin, except that they didn't have chakra systems and his henge was solid. He found out that it was the small addition of Kurama's chakra to his own that caused this, since the fox's chakra had a cohesive property, so much so that even when it dies it just reforms in time, and was much denser and more potent. He decided against ninjutsu for the same reasons, as well as the fact that he wanted to follow in his dad's footsteps and create his own cool jutsu, but still took a couple of useful D-rank elemental jutsu that could be useful for starting campfires or filling water bottles. The stack of books he had gathered was twice as wide and 5 times taller than the boy himself. The boy wondered how he was going to get them to the check desk, but then he remembered the storage scroll in his pocket, so he took it out, sealed the books, and headed over to Chizuru. "I want to look at these, Chizuru-san." Grinning, he opened the scroll and buried the woman's desk in books. With a shaky laugh, she told the boy, Naruto-kun, I'm afraid you can check out only 3 books any single time," after shedding a few tears and splitting the pile in the middle. He truly wanted to bring those books with him to read later. Really? Naruto asked. His smile falling, he spoke in a dejected tone. I apologize, but those are the guidelines. You can use that machine to copy them, but it will take a long time because you have to copy each page. She indicated a copy machine with her hand. That, sounded unpleasant to the blonde. An idea lit up Naruto's face, and he stopped rambling. So I guess I got to either come here really often or I have to copy them on the, wait. A duplicate? I understand. He smiled as he put his hand on the stack of learning material. The books started glowing a light bluish purple as the boy charged them with chakra. Naruto then focused a little and said, not shouted, Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Book version. After a moment, the boy saw another stack of books that were exactly the same as the first one. He promptly sealed the copies and left to return the originals, leaving 3 adults in disbelief and 1 Hizashi Hyuga laughing. Is everything all right now? He questioned the woman. Chizuru acknowledged, feeling a little depressed, saying, I guess so, but that many books means I will not see you in a long time. Naruto acknowledged, yeah, I guess 3 weeks is a long time. What? That scroll contains roughly 200 books. You'll need years, not weeks, she struck back. No. I read about 10 books every day on average. I refer to it as a shadow reading, the boy smiled mischievously. Chizuru said, placing an arm horizontally in front of her neck, surprise in anime fashion. She turned to face Hizashi, who shook his head, grinned, and said to her. Avoid asking. In 4 months, he memorized the majority of the books and scrolls by reading the entire Hyuga library and rereading some of them several times. Following a final farewell, the Hyuga group checked out. When they returned to the compound, Naruto was so engrossed in his thoughts, picturing the amazing things he could learn from the books, that he didn't even notice that he was on cloud 9. When they walked in, Naruto noticed something that made him smile warmly. Hinata was teaching Hanabi the fundamentals of the Juken, and judging by the way the older sister was dressed, she was a slave driver because Hanabi was on the verge of fainting from exhaustion but managed to remain composed. This scene brought back memories of the time he had done something similar with Hinata. Rewind. 1 year ago, after a quick stroll around the village, Hiyashi and Haruko invited the children to join them, but they declined, stating that they wanted to train a little together and that Naruto had created a new clone to go with the woman just in case. In order to check on the young couple, the Hyuga head, his queen, and the clone slowly made their way to the family dojo. After changing their clothes, they opened the door just enough to peek inside and saw an exhausted Hinata on her hands and knees, with Naruto standing perfectly straight just to her right, on his shoulder, holding a foam bat as long and wide as he was. 20 of his clones were also present, each of them carrying a bag full of soft balls filled with water. Get up, Hinata-chan. The boy's face was steely as he ordered. Hello. As Naruto retreated, allowing his clones to form an uneven circle around her, she focused, panted, and wobbled slowly in a vertical position before adopting an unfamiliar stance that appeared to be based on the Juken but was more flexible. Start! The original shouted, and the clones started hurling the balls at the exhausted girl ruthlessly. Everything happened in slow motion, and as the balls approached, she took a breath and drew a semicircle with her left foot. Moving it from the front to the back of her right, she appeared frozen as the spheres approached her, and when the forwardmost ball was a few millimeters from her skin, it seemed to pass right through her, as did the majority of the other water-filled containers that approached her without being deflected by the girl's hands and feet. The original boy's bat smacked her in the same spot after she gasped a little. Don't use force. I thought I had already told you this a few times. Just timing and speed. Only the opponent's power is used by the Ryusei, spirit style, who reroutes it to avoid harm. You must time it to the last minute and minimize your defense to a thin layer around your skin in order to accomplish that. Are you able to comprehend, Hinata-chan? He said, maintaining his previous expression. Hi, she said, feeling a little deflated, as she attempted to stand up and was smacked again in the same spot, which sent her tumbling to the ground. Hiyashi had had enough of the boy by this point and wanted to storm in and give Juken a bitch slap on Naruto. But Haruko saw through the obvious and used a chakra strike to a pressure point to paralyze her husband, turning him into white jelly while holding him so he could see what was happening. No, you don't. The Ryusei's greatest strength is also its biggest weakness, he said with a slight growl. Reducing your defense to that extent gives you less than a second to react in case something goes wrong, but it also surprises the opponent into believing they have found an opening. You're weak. You might have been hurt or worse if that final ball had been a shuriken or kunai. Never undervalue your opponent unless you are absolutely certain that you are at least 5 levels superior to them, or else you risk dying, he told her, his face displaying a hint of anger. since it was more abuse than all the training sessions he had done with them combined. Hiyashi was already expecting the girl to run out crying, but he was shocked. Hinata slowly stood up without shedding a tear or anything, and she appeared more determined than ever as she stood erect and didn't even blink. "What is our Nindo?" Naruto inquired. "Always do your best, never give up, never flee, never break a promise, and always defend your loved ones." She spoke without faltering at all. "Gosh. We stand by what we say. We can only become stronger if we are weak. We will continue to move forward even if we are surrounded. We will find our courage if we are afraid. And since people will be depending on us, we will give it our all while doing this." The boy gave a military-style lecture. "Hello," she said. "I didn't hear you." Naruto gave her a look. "Hello," she yelled. "What?" The blonde pretended once more. "Hello, sensei," she shouted. "All right. Then, let's begin. Prepare yourself." As the clones completed gathering the balls, positioned themselves, and started throwing once more, he gave the order. Although Hiyashi had flames in his eyes because he should be the only person his baby calls sensei in this house, Haruko noticed this and felt a finger tap his shoulder. He looked in that direction and saw his wife smiling sweetly, but behind her the dark figure smiled and waved at him, causing him to lose the color in his face this time. She avoided gracefully, moving like a flower in the wind, gliding past the projectiles and even directing some of them back at the clones. Naruto and the adults couldn't be more proud. "Well done, Hinata-chan. I had faith in your ability." Naruto threw the bat and hugged her, sticking her face to his chest. A healthy lifestyle and diet made Naruto taller than her by a head. She smiled and blushed, noticed also by her mother, who giggled a little, and whispered, "Thank you. You still have a lot of work to do, but you deserve it. Do you want to try again?" The boy grinned as he gazed down at her. Her mother opened the door and went inside before she could respond. "Hinata, Naruto-kun is correct. Even though you did a fantastic job, there is always room for improvement." She grinned, but then saw the two children glaring at her. "What's wrong?" she inquired. "Ka-san, how long have you been observing us?" Hinata raised an eyebrow in question. Both children blushed as she emphasized the word, hug, and said, "Since about 10 minutes before the hug." After giggling, the woman said, "It's time for dinner, but you can continue this later." After that, she turned around and headed for the door, where she picked up her husband's clothing and began pulling him along. "Whatever became of Hiyashi-sama?" the boy inquired. "Well, let's just say he was overcome by the excitement." Smiling, Haruko replied after getting the same response from the kids. Flashback ends. It was Hinata's turn to teach now, and the blonde gave her instructions because he believed it would help the sisters bond. As Hanabi saw him coming back, he said, "Please save me from this monster, Naruto-ni-chan." The panting toddler, who was glaring at Hinata and hiding behind the boy, said. The boy then started laughing heartily, and Hinata started to giggle as well. "What's funny?" the young girl inquired. "Hanabi-chan, is she really that awful?" As if she were a leaf, Naruto lifted Hanabi into his arms and asked. "She is, indeed, Ni-chan, and I would like to twain." She continued to glare at Hinata until she felt a chill run down her spine, then snapped her neck and looked at the boy's face, which now appeared entirely black with a murderous smile and shiny white eyes. A.N. Imagine a theater mask that conveys comedy rather than one that conveys sadness or tears, before returning to his gentle demeanor. Hinata's turn to laugh came, but her voice was softer. "What's amusing?" A concerned Hanabi inquired. "Well, Hinata-chan and Hanabi-chan are giggling at your foolishness. She treated you much kinder than either Hiyashi-sama or I did her," Naruto clarified. "Reawi?" The younger sister arched an eyebrow, saying, "Really?" "Yes." Both girls shivered, for different reasons. As the blonde explained, "A month ago, I made her dodge 200 bamboo sticks lined with poison ivy that were tied to trees in the forest outside." "Udwo-dat-ni-chan, but why take that action?" The girl became alarmed when Naruto set Hanabi down and gave her a dejected look. "Because Hinata-chan, Hanabi-chan, and I all aspire to be shinobi, and they are in grave danger. We aspire to become shinobi in order to defend our loved ones, such as your two Sama, Ka-san, and yourself. But there are people out there who gain strength in order to harm good people who have done nothing wrong. Don't ask me why they do that. I have no idea, but I do know that we train to defeat them, and if you want to get stronger, you have to give it your all until you can no longer stand it any longer. That's our ninja way, our Nindo. So, would you like to train with me?" he asked the girl. The toddler paled and began to shake her head violently from side to side as he smiled. She then ran to her sister's side and began practicing the katas, making everyone laugh uncontrollably. Naruto then went back to his room, which was about the size of a small ballroom, and was welcomed by a very content and stuffed Mickey. Apparently the compound was full of rodents, and Mickey loves to hunt and eat mice. He then activated his privacy seal, changed, and opened the scroll, wanting to start with chakra theory, but it was in the middle of the pile, so he pulled it out, and then the entire top fell on him. He dug himself out, still buried in learning material, when an orange book struck him on the top of his head and fell into his hands. What is this? He asked himself. I don't remember taking that book. He opened it, read a few lines, and then blood rushed to his face thermometer style, blasting out a large amount of blood from his nose as it reached the top. He then threw the book, but he couldn't bring himself to throw it away, so he sealed it again. Following the creation of a few shadow clones that cleaned up, recharged, using chakra, and sealed the unnecessary books, Naruto selected 5 books and put them in his clothes before creating 1,000 clones, some of which were so crowded that they were standing on a ceiling. He instructed them to memorize a book and a page, and once they were done, they had to read the remaining pages after the one they had chosen, after which the original went to sleep.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.